Handle Your High with Tadayoshi. Welcome to Handle Your High with me, Tadayoshi. And I'm going to do a little intro here for my first episode, and then we'll get into my first guest, which is my identical twin brother, Dr. Asao Inoue from the University of Washington in Seattle there. He is a tenure professor in English and rhetoric and composition, focusing on racism and writing assessment as it pertains to racism and ethnic identity. I'm very proud of him and all of his accomplishments. He's done a wonderful job, and he'll be moving on next year to Arizona State as an associate dean, still teaching English and rhetoric and composition as well. But before I get to that, I wanted to sort of give a quick little intro to the show, Handle Your High, and what it's all about, what I hope to accomplish with this sort of long form discussion format. I'm really sort of inspired by Joe Rogan and what he's done with his podcast over the last several years. I intend to do something kind of similar, but my own style. I really want to give a voice and elevate the conversation around racism, around politics, around entertainment, around anything that I think is fun to talk about. That I do not intend to really bring the conversation anything negative, so to speak. Everybody who knows me knows that I prize positivity, and I prize these kinds of concepts around keeping ourselves in a joyful and excited and inspired mode. So for me, Handle Your High really means managing your own feelings, managing the way that we feel about each other and about our world around us. And I believe in the fullness of my heart that we can have a difference of opinion in this world, that we can express our ideas, and even if we vehemently disagree with one another, we can still love each other and still disagree with each other and agree to disagree. And I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to have a more cooperative and joyful world. So my intention for this show is really to help elevate those conversations in a more academic way. I'm going to have a lot of academics on the show, as well as some popular culture people, athletes, different people who I can find, anybody who's willing to talk intelligently and who can defend their positions and who has something interesting to say about whatever topics that we have here on the show. So I hope that everybody's tuning in. The show will evolve. I will have video associated with all the shows as well. You can listen to it in audio format and, of course, in the video format as well. So I'll also have a YouTube channel called Handle Your High with Tadayoshi. You can watch these podcasts there as well. And of course, if anybody wants to give me any suggestions or topics or people to have on the show, absolutely email me at tad@tadthedietcoach.com. That's me, tad@tadthedietcoach.com. And without further ado, let's get my brother as I splice in the last. I missed the first couple of minutes from some technical difficulties, but but let's splice in where we ended up. Okay, so here we go. Oops, sorry about that. That was my fault. A little technical difficulty. So good. You said today's truths. You were saying,
I was saying like today's truths may not be tomorrow's, and so we
hold it. You mean to tell me that truth isn't static? You mean to tell me that what's true now isn't always going to be true? Because this is kind of the dialogue that kind of people, in what they don't realize, they actually are actually supporting, what they don't realize they're actually saying sometimes is like, there's only one way to think, there's only one way to believe, there's only one thing, this is true, this is not true, this is black, this is white. And I think this is part and parcel to part of what I stress is that we have to evolve. If we're going to evolve as a people, then the ideas have to evolve too. Religion has to evolve. All of our ideas have to evolve with us. Not, it can't be. There's nothing static going on. If that makes sense. I don't know why my system. You there? Crap. Whoops. You there?
Hello.
Yeah. No. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
That's all right. I mean, I think even if we can agree, or putting aside, let's say, the idea of whether or not there are some truths that are static and universal that would travel across time no matter what. It's not. I don't know if most contentious things in our world today really deal with that. That is, what I think they really deal with are the decisions that we have to make, whether it's to do X or to think about cleaner ways to create fuel and such, or to think about what do we do about folks who want to have an abortion, or whatever the thing is. That's really a decision that people use ideas that they might call truths, capital T or small t, to make the decision. So it's really about decisions, I think, that we have. The ongoing conversation has to be there in order for us to continually make better and better decisions, or at least good enough decisions in the moment that we have, and the resources and the knowledge that we have at that moment. So I don't know. So I guess I want to be agnostic about like truth. What do I know about truth? I don't know much, except what I think right now I can act on.
I agree 1,000% that it's not so important what our culture comes up with as a truth, or an individual comes up with as a truth. It's just important that each of us have the latitude to be able to discover that for ourselves. But without infringing on other people's freedoms, liberties. Obviously I'm not in for I get what I want at everybody else's expense. No, I don't really think that's a great idea for anybody, for that matter. But I do think that I should be able to voice my opinion, even if the whole world shouts against me and they don't agree. I believe in the idea that we each create our own realities through the beliefs that we hold. And when somebody holds a belief, whether it be I believe in God, or whether it be I believe the sky is blue, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you hold it to be true, and if you do hold it to be true, then it's going to be true in all of its consequences in your life, but not necessarily in mine. Although I could totally see a world that can cross-pollinate. I mean, certainly, but technically, you take an idea like beauty, for instance. And you have what we consider to be beautiful today was not considered necessarily beautiful, say 200, 300 years ago, right? I mean, women, for instance, women were a little chunkier. They had a little more meat to their bones, and there's real societal functional reasons why that idea of beauty sort of evolved, and there's real concrete reasons why our own ideas today. But to say, because I hear people talk about beauty today, they think, and I'm just using that as an example, beauty, and it's like this is a constant. This is what beauty is. No, not really, man. It doesn't have to be. Is my
I think what they probably mean is this is what I understand is this is what I see as being beautiful, and that is static for me. That is, right. It appears to be static. So what they can't see, because it's very, very difficult to see the long train of history and to see how ideas like that or aesthetics like that travel and change and evolve over time. It's difficult to see it. What we see is the very small slice of existence that we get to see in our, let's say, 80 years of existence. But really, it's only the middle part of that, I think, or the 2/3 of that existence, which we have any ability to.
Man.
There?
Yeah, I'm there. Now I'm here. Yeah, now I'm here.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
So you said it's only so the last part you just said before I couldn't hear you.
I don't. I would just think that it's really what I think those folks tend to mean when they're, or at least what we have a hard time seeing past is our own limited span of life, right? So we get to see a small slice. That means we don't actually see the larger machine of history that creates ideas and aesthetics and practices and other things. So what we think is, it's always been this way. Because for me, it's always been this way. We've always seen that as the aesthetic, or that is the ideal, or whatever it is, or the preferable. But in fact, that's not, as you said earlier, it's not really historically the case. So if we could see something historical, then that would be great. But of course, that's very difficult to do without something that records that, right? Like books, or now we have media that can record things historically, and we can look back at.
And even history is seen through the lenses of the writers who are writing it, or through the perspective of whoever is telling the story. Whoever's in charge of that narrative, they're the ones who are going to paint history the way they want.
So they get to determine what's important to record, and then what other
and sometimes even just as important, what's not, what they don't record, what they leave out.
I think that's the flip side of that coin, right? Absolutely. So that's what we have to. If we're conscious of that, then I think we can make better decisions, right? Because then we can always have a critical eye on what we get as information, even if it's historical information, or what we get in the present. We'll know every bit of information, while it may make present tell me something about whatever we're talking about or whatever I need to make a decision on. It also doesn't tell me things. It also leaves out or deflects away information and ideas that I don't currently have access to for a lot of different reasons. So yeah.
Well, in the current age, we have so much information available to us, like at our fingertips, literally. I mean, and so it really makes it really kind of fascinating to when you think about this in the landscape of what's going on right now. One might argue, hey man, you can get, it's up to us, it's up to you or whatnot to be able to get whatever information you need to make the right choices. And so you get all these, so you end up having a lot of really opinionated people voicing their opinions who really probably, and I hate to say this because I really believe that every opinion has a voice, but some opinions don't necessarily need to be heard with the same weight. Or at least I should take that back. Maybe they should just be understood under the weight that that we should acknowledge that they have. If it's an opinion, like I'm the advocate that says that we should all be able to express our opinions. But am I going to take Joe Blow's opinion on the street? Is his opinion as very credible or very serious? And when I consider my own ideas, or when it comes to say English rhetoric and composition over yours, probably not. If I don't know him to be an expert, or I don't know him to have some ideas that that he can really back up, that really have some cogent sort of intelligence behind them, so to speak, that I could say is credible. But I think that a lot of people just end up, because of social media, you get, if you plaster your ass onto fucking Instagram long enough, and you get enough people following you, then you seem to have a voice for something. Not always, but sometimes there's good voices out there. But many times it's like what I hear is them regurgitating axioms and things that you hear a lot that are kind of cliche, that are like that they know that they're just saying to reinforce what they think their audience is going to resonate with, when it's really not. I know it can't be really their opinion because it's so fucking shallow. It's like, it's like really, it's like just be positive, or like which is great. I think it's a great message. It's like you should know yourself. Well, then a person who really knows themselves probably wouldn't be showing their ass on fucking Instagram every day just to get a couple likes. It's like it's like again, this is just my assumptions. I'm just making some assumptions, but
I think you're right that social media has created this sense that everyone has an equal voice. And
that's the part.
About everything.
About everything, right.
Or I should say about anything. And that's just not true. I mean,
right.
It would be nice in an ideal world if everybody's voice was equal, but that would also mean that everybody's level of education and everyone's level of experience and training and what have you on that subject are equal as well.
Well,
they're not. Because out of necessity.
When my car breaks, I'm not going to ask the guy on the street who's fucking pouring my coffee at Starbucks. I'm probably not going to ask him for advice. Hey, or better yet, if he gave me some advice, would I take it? It's like, oh man, I'll tell you what you need to do. You need to do this because this shit worked for me. It's like, oh, do I really? Versus somebody who's a real expert. Who I'm going to take it to.
So I think the distinction is that everyone has a right to their own opinion, but not everyone should really tell everyone else their opinion.
Or at least we all shouldn't take it with the same weight. We should realize that
but there's a deception in there. I mean, there's a tricky spot in there with social media, because with social media, it distributes people's ideas and opinions. And so you might have the right to your opinion in the United States, but I don't know if we should automatically assume that everyone has the right to distribute their opinion to everybody in the United States.
That's interesting.
That's a different story, I think, because the problem with distributing bad ideas is that the repetition of any idea starts to become unquestioned at some point. It's the whole adage from, I think it was It was either Orwell. It was either 1984, George Orwell's 1984, or it was Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, in which they just repeated the idea. I think it was 1984. Just repeated the idea: war is peace. War is peace.
Over and over
and over again. And then next thing you know, everyone believes it, and they stop questioning it. They might have questioned it initially, but they don't. We saw this with George W. Bush and the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. After a while, people stopped questioning about whether there was any weapons of mass destruction. We stopped asking that question. We're asking these different questions, and we still should have been asking. There's never found any. So that's I mean, it's important that distributing the ideas, repeating them circulating them in society is very dangerous, especially if they're uninformed opinions. Any jackass can have their opinion, that's fine, but I don't want to hear it.
Right.
I don't want to hear everybody's opinion. That's why this is my criticism of today's quote unquote news shows, where half the time they put up fucking viewers' tweets. I don't care about why am I listening to Joe?
Yeah, why is this important? Like, what credibility does this person have?
One, how is that news? Two, how is that actually giving me new information about it doesn't. What it does is stir the pot.
Right.
Stirring the pot and gets them viewers, because what they really are giving us isn't news, it's news food. It smells like news, it kind of looks like news, but sure the fuck isn't news. It's something else. It's the Velveeta of news.
It looks like cheese, not really cheese.
Well, it kind of acts like cheese, but it ain't cheese.
Not really cheese. I have to think this through, because my question would be, who gets to decide who gets to be distributed? Because when you start questioning things like distribution, then you get in the same kind of paradox or same issues and problems that we had. One of the big reasons why we've advanced as a culture, in my opinion, in the last 15 years so dramatically, like ideas and things are really changing. I think things are really, really changing, and especially in the metaphysical space, in the spiritual space, in the personal development space. And you wouldn't even have heard about mindfulness at the same level that you hear about today, and research even wouldn't be done. There's all kinds of research being done now because of this, because of the internet, because of how easily it has been to distribute good ideas. And then when good ideas grab a hold, just like with bad ideas, it starts to proliferate itself, right? There's this sort of snowball effect, gains momentum and I really believe that good ideas resonate with people, bad ideas generally don't. Bad ideas generally resonate with people who want to hold those ideas, but they don't resonate with the vast majority. I'm a firm believer that in general, people are good by nature. Most people are good by nature. There's a couple bad apples out there, I'm sure, but in general, I think people are good at the vast majority, and when they hear a good idea, like love yourself, like love your neighbor, I think they would generally agree this is a good idea. Whether they practice it or not is another story. But in general, they believe that these are good ideas, and they could generally also accept bad ideas because I think that you're right. There is a risk when you repeat something, because here's what I know about beliefs. I've done a lot of research over the years, especially in the last couple of years, on beliefs and creating our own realities. And I'm into all this law of attraction, all these kinds of things. And one of the things that I know for sure is that a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. You think a thought long enough, you repeat it long enough to yourself, and you will believe it. It will become part of your belief. Just take your name, for instance, like the moniker that our parents give us. It's just something they made up. And they gave to us. They assigned it to us at some date, and we took it on. We made it real. We made it ourselves. And then if you ask anybody out there what their name is, they're going to be able to tell you, and they'll argue it to their death because that's their name. That's who they identify with. But it's not because it's real. It's because they've made it real through their belief, through repetition. And you're right. So I think my question and quandary would be, well, it gets a little sticky there with how you decide who gets the credibility and who doesn't, because now all of a sudden you got gatekeepers, right? Yeah. And that's the problem I want to get away from.
Well, and I think that there's always a paradox in things like this, right? I mean, I think whenever you get to the quote unquote truth of things, I think it's always comes down to paradoxes. It's yes and no, it's right and wrong. So yes, everyone deserves to have their own opinion, and good ideas that are not dominant can become they can become good ideas in the world and affect change. But they start out as ideas, like you're saying, they're fringy, right? They're outside the norm. And so I think there has to be space again, this is a paradox. There has to be a space, a social space for us to be able to explore new ideas that may seem very dangerous to a lot of people. But let me, I think, you bring up a good quandary. I mean, a good question. I think I wonder about it. I wonder about. I'm certainly not an advocate for silencing people and silencing.
That's what I'm trying to get away from. That's kind of the function of the show. We talk about let's present ideas, talk about it, get them out there.
We also should recognize the danger in propagating, just circulating just any idea. And the nature, and it's the nature of those ideas. So here's what I'm thinking.
But that assumes, you got to admit that assumes that some people are going to be competent and be able to at understanding good ideas and bad ideas.
So let me offer one way to one way. Now I don't know if this is the right way, but it's one way to think about.
Well, if you came up with it, it's got to be the right way.
Well, I didn't actually come up with it. So there's this really fascinating research on how our brains make decisions and what we are most attracted to. So there's this guy who wrote this really popular book several years ago, about maybe like 4 years ago, named Daniel Kahneman. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. And so in his 30 some years of researching the brain, and he's, by the way, he's also Pulitzer Prize winning economist that does this.
I'm gonna have to read this book.
Yeah, it's a big, thick book, but the book basically summarizes all of these different studies that he was a part of over the years about how our brains make decisions, how they process information and make decisions. And
does he talk? Just out of curiosity, does he get into plasticity, brain plasticity, or is that not part of this conversation?
I don't recall if he did or not. He might, but I don't recall if he did.
Okay.
That's not a note that when I was reading the book and when I was looking into the studies that he summarizes, I wasn't looking closely at that part. Gotcha. What I do recall at this about that's pertinent here is that what he shows in studies after study after study is that our brains react more strongly to negative stimuli because of the fight or flight.
When you say react more strongly, what does he mean by that?
What he means is when you are faced with a decision and you get information, right? You get negative information and you get positive information. Your brain is more likely to gravitate and weigh more heavily the negative, because statistically, when you just put out the numbers, it is biologically better. We are biologically better off if we only consider the negative. So, for instance, if we worry about threats to our lives, right? Like there's
a fucking tiger chasing me.
Exactly, right? Or I hear something. It's got to be a threat to my life.
Okay, right. So what the fuck's that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just that is an adaptive mechanism that our brains use to evolve and
to
stay
protect
alive
us.
and protect us. Now, he says statistically, if you just listen to that stimuli, you are going to live longer. That is, as a species. Now, take any given situation, and it may not be a good idea to just listen to overvalue the negative, right?
Right.
So, but we're still stuck in this evolutionary trough, so to speak, in terms of how our brains work. So this is why what we find in university studies, when you give students one negative bit of feedback on their learning, say in writing, this is what I know, right? Studies on writing. You give them one, they will listen to that it affects them psychologically more than 3 or 4 items of positive reinforcement.
Really? I guess I believe that.
So that's why there's this common in the writing, in the realm of teaching writing, there's this common formula for giving feedback on papers, and that is you start with something positive. Then you offer the critical advice, the formative, like you can improve this way, and then you offer another positive, so that you begin and end with positive because you want to reinforce. Look, this is I'm not looking for bad things. I want to help you, but I don't want you to feel bad about your writing because we can be very sensitive about our own words, and so you sandwich it, right? Or you offer so many 3 good things and one critical thing.
You try to balance.
Try to balance it, but balance it in terms of giving more positive than negative advice,
right,
or feedback.
I think the same kind of critique and advice is done with raising children as well. That's what I've read, and I do. Yeah, and I use the same tactic in my coaching when I coach athletes and coach my clients. I I'm always honest, but I always couch it in a positive way. Because what I've read, I'm curious of what he would say about this, because without reading the book, that I know that the brain doesn't handle negative very well. It doesn't process it very well, but it does recognize it. It like you said, it produces this response, this alert response, and I'm curious if that alert response that he's talking about, that you just mentioned, that's the hormonal response. That's like cortisols and adrenaline and all these, like, wake you up, get your heart going, get ready for some bullshit, some shit that's going to happen that you got to react to. Like those, I'm assuming that's what he's talking about, right?
Well, the studies I remember reading about in his book talk about. So what they did was they took students, I think it was students, participants, and they did brain scans to see what areas of the brain were activated when certain kinds of information were given to them for them to make a quick decision on. And so I believe that was how I could be getting some of the details wrong, but it was something like that. So a lot of that work was looking at, like, scans of brains. It wasn't simply like doing indirect observations about the brain. It was actually looking at parts of the brain that they know this is this part of the brain is active when emotions are active, or when someone's worried or angry or excited or happy, or and so forth. So that's what they were looking at. Although you remind me of other research in education and as well as, I think, psychology, but I know for sure education and writing studies that look at the way in which certain kinds of feedback, reinforcements to students is bad. And the most compelling stuff is around grades and other kinds of gold stars and things like that. Best one that I can think of that really hits this home and looks at broadly social psychology, education, research, and so forth is Alfie Kohn. And Alfie Kohn his the famous book that he wrote on this was Punished by Rewards. And he gives a really great argument for not only why any kind of reward system or punishment system really function the same way. And in a school setting or a learning setting, he uses 3 settings: school, raising children, parenting, and the workplace. And he says in all 3 of those cases, we function psychologically the same when it comes to rewards and punishments. And bottom line is, rewards and punishments are both bad for us. If the goal in those situations is to do something, is to learn something, or to do something better or socially acceptable or whatever. So he takes the example of, like, getting your child to clean up their room, right? Like so you're going to reward them. You can either, as a parent, reward them when they do it and then reinforce the behavior, or you can punish them and spank them when they don't do it and make them have to do it so that they avoid the punishment. Both of those things work on a short-term basis, but what they don't do very well is change the brain into thinking cleaning my room is a good idea. Right? And that's really what we want. We don't want avoid being spanked or get the cookie, in the evening because mommy will give me a cookie if I clean my room. What we want is the child to say cleaning my room is a good idea, but. So rewards and punishments don't actually do that very well. You need to have some self-motivation to be able to do that. And that is a much harder, larger sort of ecological thing.
Was that the same researcher who did the research on children with this rewards and punishment mechanism where they were with the M&Ms, I think it was. I think I saw a thing on it was on capitalism, I believe, but and I forgot what it was what I saw. But there was a study done with children. They talked about rewarding them with M&Ms, and he said he had tried this himself with home. His daughter was, like, learning how to potty train her or him or what. I don't know if it was a boy or girl, and he said real quickly, people and children, especially children, but people figured out really fast, and then the kid figured out, it doesn't matter how much I pee. So she would save her pee, and then she would pee multiple times. Oh, I need some more M&Ms, or I need some more M&Ms. And they always know how to, like, circumvent the system and, like, cheat the system. And so the rewards never really.
Well, the rewards end up being an extrinsic motivator that always is not the thing that you want. In this case,
you want them to
learn. If you want to change that behavior, they have to have an internal motivation to change their behavior, and that it's not to say that's impossible. It's just it's not likely with with external rewards.
Well, when you think about it, like when I think about it, rewards and punishments are working off of one type of learning, which I call like forced learning. You're really trying to force somebody to change a behavior or to modify a behavior or to have a behavior that you think is the right kind of behavior, whether it be knowing mathematics or whether it be learning how to clean your room or go to college because it's a good thing to do, or get married because that's what you want for everybody, or whatever, if that's what the family wants. But whatever it is, there's a behavior you want, and you reinforce it by how you treat them, what words you say to them, if you're nice to them, if you call them every weekend, or if you take them out to dinner, or whatever it is, or any number of things. Or, grades. Maybe like a grading system is a way to reward and punish students. It's like, oh, you didn't learn what we wanted you to learn, you get a bad grade. And to me, that's not really learning. That's like sort of memorization. That's copycat. That's reiteration. That's emulation. But that's not really. Do we want a society filled with emulators, filled with copycats, filled with people who aren't really organically or naturally embracing certain ideas? When you have that, to me, I think that's what the Romans way back called true citizenship. It's what I want to embrace as true citizenship in a republic or in a government or in a culture. I want to be truly actualized, a real human, full, and I call it knowing yourself. When you really, really, really know who you are, then you really don't give a fuck about what anybody thinks about you or your ideas or what you say. You really don't. I mean, you just can't, because you realize very quickly when you know who you are that it's you, man. My ideas are uniquely mine, and it doesn't really take a consensus for it to be a good idea or a bad idea. It could be a good or a bad idea all on its own. and it doesn't define me. It doesn't, like, what I did in my past, how I performed, how much money I made, what job I got, what girlfriend I have, what my kids are doing, what car I drive, how much money I have in the bank, all that stuff, what I know, what degrees I have, what groups I'm a part of, doesn't really define who I really am. It's just some stuff that I've done, some stuff that is a part of my experience. And that.
So then what is you then? Like what is you say, like, yeah, like if it's not the things you've done in the past, or that's just necessarily your ideas.
Yeah, I once believed that I am my ideas, I am my feelings and my ideas, and I really don't take to that anymore. Those are a part of my experience. They inform my experience oftentimes. They allow me to move differently in my experience, my ideas, my understandings. But who I really am is beyond all this, man. And I'm really, it kind of leads me into, like, I'm really kind of with Joe Rogan on this, some of this stuff when it comes to like the psychedelic experience. Like you go into these, I want to do like a DMT journey or like an ayahuasca journey at some point in my life and really experience this sort of detachment from this reality. And from what I understand, what happens is, all these layers of your ego, these things like who you think you are, your experiences, how old you are, your body, all this kind of go away, and they always give you the same kind of experience. They say, I left my body, and I was like, time and space was nothing anymore, and I was like, I was everything. And the way they describe it was like, it's just sort of very unreal. It's like all this, this, like you could see the universe, and you have a different kind of relationship with it. It is you. It's part of you. It's all you. It's nothing to you. It's like, and I think that to me, like, that's who I really am. I'm really sort of. It's like I think that I'm like to put it in like the very rough metaphorical language that we have, because it's right. It's just this metaphorical language that we have doesn't really describe the entity that we really, really, really are. And that's the part that I want to, that I'm always seeking further knowledge of. Who am I really? And what I understand myself to be is I'm a spiritual creature living a physical experience. And that physical experience has 3 goals. Only. That's it. The details of those goals change from person to person, but they're basically the same. 1, expansion. I came to this life to become more and more and more as I keep going. I didn't come here to be the same my whole life. Anybody if I told somebody, hey man, today this is as good as it's gonna get, bro, then you'd be like, fuck it, I might as well put a bullet in my head. Fuck, if it doesn't get any better than this, if I can't grow, become more, have more, do more, get more, then why would I be here? 2, we come here for freedom. We come here because we wanted to discover this life in our own way, not the way your parents said to do it, not the way society says to do it, not the way anybody else says to do it, but you to discover your own ideas, your own experiences, your own way to live this life, even if it's the same as somebody else or similar, but it's your own. It's uniquely yours. That's, this idea of expansion and the idea of uniqueness is like not, uniqueness is a bad word. Liberty, it's freedom. It's the freedom to like explore your life the way you want to, within the bounds of not fucking up other people, of course, right? Because that's not part of it. And then the last one is, expansion, freedom, but if you can't do all that joyfully, like that's the last bit, that's the code cracker. You got to be, we come here to expand, to become more, to do that our own way, and it's got to be a joyous journey, because if it's not joyous, if it's not fun, if it's not exciting, if it's not something that feels good to our life, then it's not worth it. If I could give you everything you wanted in your life, everything, say, I'm a fucking genie, I'll give you one wish, I'll give you everything you want, just like that, except the caveat is, you're gonna be miserable. You'd be like, fuck it, you keep your shit. Keep your shit, I'll do this shit on my own. It's like, and that's kind of my point. My point is that it's always about a joyful journey, right? And how you get there don't matter. And when people feel like they can't get there, then they oftentimes just either kill themselves, hang themselves, jump off a bridge in their life. They're done. And I totally get that. So I forgot why I came into that conversation, but I think it was because what we were talking about just before that. What was it?
Man, I forgot what we moved on to this.
But my understandings of it, and so who do I think I really am? And I believe in this idea that I am a spiritual creature living a physical experience. That physical experience lives within those parameters, but who I really am has nothing to do with that. This is just, I'm like in a video game. It's like we're all playing this fucking rad video game, this virtual reality video game, and when I die, not such a bad thing. I get to reboot and go. I get to press the restart button, and I believe in lives, more lives. I don't know what they're about. I don't know anything about it. Like I definitely believe that we live more than one life. That we have there's a
reincarnation, or like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it looks like. I don't know if it really looks like what we think of reincarnation. Or what maybe Hindus think of reincarnation or Buddhists think of reincarnation. But I do think there's something to be said to say, like, look, these physical bodies are just vessels, right? Like it's hard for me to believe that this is it. Like, this is it, baby. Because can I really kill consciousness? Some people would say you might be able to when the body goes away. Like, consciousness exists in the body.
But see, that you bring up a question like, what exactly, and this is why I was asking the original question about, like, what is you then? What really is you? If it's not your actions, if it's not your ideas, and you're even suggesting it's not even my material body.
No, I don't.
I wonder, like, the more I have read about the studies on judgment and the brain and how it works, the more I realize that we use very loose language around this I, like so I'm not even sure what, like, my own consciousness. Yes, I am conscious because I know that I know things, and I know that I'm here, and I know, or at least I think I am. I'm experiencing that, and the experience is what I use to say I know myself in this space and time. But what is that exactly? Like, what exactly is my knowing this experience? What exactly in this world is it? Is it chemicals in my brain doing shit? Is it little electric, synapses that are going across little in my brain? Is it something much more cosmic and otherworldly? Or is it all of those things? I mean, I don't know, and so it makes me.
Well, I think there's two. Go ahead.
No, just it makes me wonder about when I say, "Oh, this is me." I've always thought of it as. And I still strongly believe much of this. I am the product of my decisions and my actions, the process of my life. Does that mean that I'm the same person I was 10 years ago? Of course not. It actually means the opposite. It means that I'm somebody else. But that somebody else is always becoming. It's always in the act of movement. But that doesn't necessarily resolve the question about, like, well, when I refer to myself, the I, and say, this is who I am, it becomes much more slippery for me. Like, just I don't know how to. I don't really have an answer to it. I just know that it's very slippery.
Here's my when I hear you say that, I totally get it what you're saying, because I think there's two aspects of our personality, of our beingness that we're really talking about. One is our awareness, and one is our consciousness. And I believe that awareness is a derivative of consciousness. In other words, you are conscious of what's going on in your environment, your ideas, what feels good, what feels bad, but that's just a byproduct of your consciousness. It's not, your awareness is not consciousness. It's just a byproduct. So, and I make that distinction between those two things because it's the consciousness part because what you were talking about originally was there's this level of awareness, my body, where I am in time and space, what I'm doing, that's awareness. And I don't know if you can, like, you can sort of, backtrack that to your consciousness and say, okay, well, who's really the perceiver, right? Like, who's the perceiver? And I would say that, like, for me, when I think about this, one analogy that I think of is like a video game. Like, I'm playing Halo, or I'm playing Call of Duty. And if you were to come in my living room, we're playing Call of Duty, and we would say, oh, that's my character. This is who I am. But you wouldn't say that's me. I mean, you do say that's me, but you wouldn't say it like from the standpoint of that's me, all of me. If you want to know anything about me, look at that. Go look at my equipment, look at my guns, look at my ammo, look at where I'm at in the game, look at what I've accomplished, how many medals I got, how many kills I got, all this kind of stuff. You might say that for somebody who's playing in the game. They want to get an idea of who you are in the game, right? And I kind of see that life as a game. Like, this is the game we're playing. We're playing this game. Granted, we take it pretty seriously, but I know some people who play Call of Duty take it pretty seriously too. So it's like we take this shit seriously, but when we have to ask that, we still have to ask that question sometimes: who am I? Am I really this game? Can I elevate myself above this so that I can, one, play the game better, have a better experience in my game? Because one way or another, man, you got two choices in this life, right? We can walk through it miserably, or we can walk through it joyfully. It's really that simple for me. In my mind, way of thinking, it's that simple. And part of it has to do with understanding who you are. If you don't think you have that kind of control, then guess what? You don't. So, but I do know I have that kind of control. I know I do, and I absolutely exert it on a regular basis. And so part of it is my understanding that I am this consciousness that is aware of things, but I just don't have to try to tell myself that what I do is who I am. What I don't do is who I am, or a reflection of who I am and what I'm not. And that's where, I mean, I've spent my life in the sport of bodybuilding, and I think it just makes me, at this age of my life, at almost 50, makes me go, hey, like, after pursuing all these sort of physical things for so long, right? And it's like all intensively immersive in your life. It like takes over everything, right? Dieting and cardio and competing and you name it. And it's more than just like I'm going to the gym. It's a complete lifestyle. It takes over. It becomes who you are. You can't think of anything else but it. And that you can really start to really believe that that's who you are. Like, and a lot of people, they come up to me like at shows and they think that's really who I am. And I'm happy that that's a part of me, but there's so much more that is me that has nothing to do with that. And they'll continue to be that way, right? And it's because that who I really am, who I'm really talking about here is this: the real me is a consciousness, and it is interacting with this physical body. And this physical body is this vessel that I get to use. It's like when we were growing up and we played Dungeons and Dragons, and we loved that stuff. It was because we create these cool characters, and we didn't play one kind of character. Right? I mean, I think we had some preferences. Like, I had some preferences to like these barbarian fighters, but also paladins who would like be these ultra good people who would go there and save everybody and shit, and you had sort of a preference for magicians and these kinds of things. So we may have preferences, but we had myriads. We had like loads of different characters that had different types of personalities, and some were evil and some were good. Most of them, I think we were pretty good on the whole. But in general, you can just play it the way you want to. And I think this is the way this life is. But you and I didn't define ourselves. I remember all the criticisms out there, like, oh, you shouldn't tell our mother, oh, you shouldn't let your Ted and Ty play D&D because it's going to make them be devil worshippers. And we're like, what the fuck? Do these people play the same game we do? Like just because my character goes out there and sacrifices cats doesn't mean that I'm going to want to go out there and sacrifice cats. It was like, or not that they did that, but it's just like...
You've seen that side note. You've seen that documentary on the famous case in the early mid '80s about the kid. He was in the Midwest, I think in Ohio or Michigan. I think maybe Michigan, who he was a senior in high school maybe, and going to college. Went off to college I think he was like 17 when he went to college, and then dropped off the planet. Like they didn't find him. So they were searching for him, and he had I don't remember all the details of it, but he was the case. Like he played D&D and he had all this stuff, and they had this private investigator and these detectives looking for him and stuff, and they found his.
What the fuck did he do?
He didn't do anything. What happened was he was mentally unstable. He happened to be mentally unstable, and then I think he was also socially lonely because he was very young in college.
So he disappeared, like he was like in a room with his friends playing D&D with Pepsi and Coke all day.
He ran. I think if I remember right, he ran off and didn't tell his mom or his dad or anybody where he went, and just disappeared for a couple of weeks and then reappeared. He didn't die, but then I think he later, I don't know if it was that year or the next year, he committed suicide. But he had like mental illness that compounded this, and then they just attached this weird game that nobody knew not much about to this idea of devil worshiping, because he had all this stuff about devils and demons and stuff and dragons and things in his.
That's like saying all businessmen, all wealthy businessmen are going to be our next best president, because Donald, it's like, no, we can't like extrapolate one guy's experience over the entire fucking game or the entire fucking volume of people who are doing this.
There was a bit of sensationalism with it that it was a sensational story, because this was this white kid from the Midwest who disappeared, and they want to know where to go. What happened to him? And then I remember. He's got this.
I think I remember that story, but I remember people telling mom this stuff like, "Oh, you shouldn't let us play D&D because it's fucking bad. They're devil worshippers." And I kept thinking, man, why they don't like? Why would they like a game is going to make? It's not like saying if they change the laws so that it was legal to smoke crack, then I'm going to go out there and buy some crack and smoke it. Like, I'm not really interested in crack at all if it was legal or illegal. I'm really not interested in it. Like, but some people might be. That's okay. Go for it. Smoke your crack. But
I understand. I see the from at face it could look like this is a vehicle for devil worshipping or for some nefarious.
Only for those people who are devil worship, who are in line to do that. You know what I mean? Who are susceptible.
Right. So I think there just wasn't the kind of investigation into the game itself.
Doesn't this speak to controlling behavior, like what we were talking about earlier? Because I don't like the idea. So when I look at my daughter, I don't try to control her behaviors. I don't say, don't do this, don't do that. I say, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. Sometimes I have to say, oh, well, we can't do that right now. But in general, I don't try to tell her exactly what to do, not because I don't want good things for her, but because I want her to develop this friggin' skills of being able to weigh out her experience or what's going on and select from her best judgment. If you don't, that's a skill.
The tough thing is that there's factors involved in our society that often don't let us make good decisions. For instance, corporations can withhold, and often do withhold, vital information about the products and services that they sell us. And take the tobacco lobby that has over the years consciously and methodically put information out there contrary to the actual real facts about smoking and tobacco. Same thing with I'm forgetting the name of it now. The big pesticide and
like DDT.
No, it's the corporation that.
I know who you're talking about.
They run the farming.
They're large. They're like, I forgot what they're. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, Monsanto.
Monsanto owns the legal rights to most of the corn that's grown in the United States, in the world. That is the genetic rights. They own the genetic rights.
That's fine. How do you own the genetic rights?
Exactly. How can you? Well,
that's like saying that I own the genetic rights to like children, to human beings.
I mean, but what that has allowed them to be able to do is to control the kinds of information that because they don't have to now. This is a private corporate a secret because it's part of our livelihood, right? So they can say we can't tell you exactly all the studies, and we're not even going to let some folks do certain kinds of research on the genetic code that we own the rights to. They can't, right? So you see how that makes for a limited amount of information that is.
I think academics should have
to make decisions that we now. Same thing. I mean, it is the same kind of way. The kinds of information that is held from people when it comes to things like the environment and the coal and the energy sector that causes like things like fracking. And we don't.
You hear a lot about that.
We don't know all the damage that these corporations are doing just to make a profit that damages particular communities. And because we don't know that information, we can't make good decisions. And we could have all the information that is available to us and yet still make a fucking bad decision because the information we have is either tainted, bad, or incomplete. And all of that leads to really bad things. Children are even worse. It's a worst case scenario for children because children's brains are still developing. They don't even always have the capacity to make good decisions given good information. So not only do they have incomplete information oftentimes, but they have incomplete and their brains are incomplete.
Right.
So I agree with you. I think we don't have to overly infantilize our children to the point where that we're just telling them what to do.
No, I think you lead them in steps. Lead them in steps. Like, so I think that you'll know, like, I get a good sense of what, like, my daughter Kiana, I get a good sense of what Kiana can grasp logically and functionally to a certain degree. And then I try to walk her through it. Like, hey, we want to do this. Hey, what do you think about this? And I'm always asking questions like that. What do you think about this? Like, what do you think? Do you think this is a good idea? Why? And I want her to give me an answer. Like, I don't let her off the hook because to me, that's that critical thinking skill. That's that part where it gets her brain going in a different direction than just, because right now I think children, as well as students, they're used to this. Somebody barking knowledge at them, facts at them, and then they're going to have to remember it and regurgitate it, and they think that's learning. Okay, to me, that's the lowest level of learning. That's reiterative learning. A monkey could do this. They copy. We do it instinctively. Actually, they know this now. We instinctively copy each other, and that's how we learn basic skills, like how to eat, how to do different things. We copy each other. Well, and as a matter of fact, you'll see mothers intuitively do this when they talk. Even we do it when you have your infant. And they start to talk. You start to talk to them. You'll see that you'll actually dummy down your own English, your own voice, just to a level that's, they show studies on this, to a level that's slightly higher than what you know the child can understand, so that the child is now challenged and will move up its language skills, stimulates that part of their brain to do that. Well, I really believe that this is a way that we should do all kind of learning. That we should challenge and we should give people an opportunity to really, really, really understand on a different level. So that way, not just, hey, this is the War of 1812, or hey, the Declaration of Independence says this, or hey, this is what these laws mean, this is what this means, but what does it mean to me? Do I think that meaning is valid? Those are way different kinds of questions.
Well, I agree with you, but I think there's also a danger in that as well. And I don't mean a danger in the sense that we shouldn't do it, only that we have to be aware that we get what we ask for, right?
Absolutely.
So if you give kids or students or whomever we're talking about, citizens even, the option to choose something freely, or to make up their own minds about things, expect a range, right?
Right. Well, this is the sort of the dilemma that we live in, and I say that we accept it, but as you and I have said on many occasions, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, but I don't think everyone sees that, and I think that's also, we have to expect that. So take Donald Trump, for example. I think he firmly believes in the shit the shit he spews out every day. He's the dumbest guy I have ever seen doing that really important job, right?
Either that or he's willing to put out the dumbest stuff that he says and does.
But I mean, it's too consistent. He's too consistent, stupid. So, but my problem is that, I think he really believes that he's the good guy. He believes.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't believe they're the good guy?
He's wearing the white hat in his fucking comic book. But to my comic book, he's not even wearing the black hat. He's the idiot who let the guy with the black hat in the door. That's what's happening. That's who he is, and didn't know it.
In history, he just might be the comic relief.
I don't know.
You guys had a real serious run there for a little while. We're gonna break up the monotony for 4 years with this guy here. Hey, let's go roll.
I think he was the answer to the white anxiety in our country from
totally
having 8 years of Obama.
Well, what disturbs me the most about what seems to have flourished in the wake of Donald Trump, and don't get me wrong, I think there's some good stuff. I think there's an awful lot of bad stuff, but I'm an optimist about everything. But what concerns me the most is this. Oh my gosh! It almost seems like there's a upsurge or a resurgence, or at least a magnifying glass on some of this really hateful behavior and language towards each other.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is due to the tone that the president sets when his messages are constantly negative. Frightening people, scaring people about border walls and drug dealers and rapists coming over the border, which was his language initially, and then following up on that caustic, negative language, casting everyone that's against him in negative terms, and never admitting that he's wrong. He's never ever said he's sorry. He never ever admitted he's wrong. Never ever admitted any fault, and he's had a lot of wrongs and faults. Just like all of us, we all are, but he's not one to ever admit that. But I think that creates a tone in the U.S. that validates lots of other folks what the negative things that they're feeling, because they're anxious, because the world is going to hell in a handbasket or whatever they think, right? Whatever they're experiencing, and there's a lot of bad stuff that people experience.
Well,
on all sides, for sure, but. He validates that, and then they are, I think, more willing to act on those feelings and those words that they have in their head. Well, when they should probably just keep them in their head.
I know he's willing to act on his. Just grab him by the fucking pussy,
Yeah, exactly.
Just grab him by the pussy.
Bad. Yeah.
In what conversation is that ever good? A political conversation. Like, in a conversation like this, it's funny, but what conversation is that ever good, right? Like, grabbing the pussy. Like, okay, well, here you go. Sure, man.
Right. So
he's a fascinating. I think you're absolutely right. He definitely believes that he's the good guy in this, and I wouldn't say he's necessarily the bad guy, as a black and white character. But he's certainly got some. He to me represents the fear in the United States, like this attitude that we have to be afraid of our enemies. We have to be afraid of.
That there's only one that mode of communication and getting elected. The mode based on fear. That there's only one kind of historical political groups.
Fascism.
Never use that. Fascism. Yeah.
Fascism. I know.
It's very clear. It's very, very clear. So
It feels that way.
This is where we're headed.
I know. It feels.
I've heard arguments, and I've seen some that argue we are already there. We're already in a sort of pseudo-fascist state.
We are absolutely. And people seem to be okay with the idea of having like a militaristic type of state, a very sort of They're like, that's okay. How did that become okay? Like, didn't we learn anything from fucking the Third Reich? Like, people die fucking stupid from shit like that. Like, and then they'll always try to mention all the good stuff. I actually heard people defend that sort of system by saying, a lot of great medical advances came out of
You mean testing on people?
Right, testing on humans and shit like that. Yeah, I said, and technically, from a scientific, yes, we got information from it, but was that the best way to get it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure we'd be all right without it.
It's not just about the ends, right? It's about the means to those ends. Like, how are you? I think if we are not in the quiet space in our bedrooms or in these like more silent spaces, if we are not ethical and good there, then I don't think that whatever we produce from whatever our actions are, they're not worth as much. And they're certainly like, I don't know if anyone would say, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and trade my life or my happiness or joy for some kind of bit of knowledge, or even no matter how good that is, right? No, I don't think they would do that. And that's because, so I should say, why would we volunteer other people's lives and livelihood, and to say, no, you're going to be the ones who sacrifice?
Well, this to me, this still goes back to this whole idea of the second reason why we come here, which is this idea of liberty, doing this life our own way. And we didn't come here to have anybody make those choices for us. So when somebody starts making choices for other people, other groups, that I start taking issue, because even if it's not my group, it's because like it could be my group. Like, just because it's not my group today,
next time,
because the next time it could be my fucking group. Like, you could be taking my motherfucking liberties away.
But I think the larger, like, philosophical or abstract idea that I think you're getting at is that it doesn't actually matter if it could be your group next time. It's just another group.
Exactly.
It impedes the right of an entire segment of society to be able to live their lives in an agentive and a way that is meaningful and joyful and so forth.
Yeah, and I find it hard to believe that anybody would want anybody, like, it would be ludicrous to me to think that anybody could say, oh yeah, I would feel good about somebody making all my choices for me, or making choices for me that would harm me, or that would hurt me, or that would put me below anybody else. Yeah, because I'm just a lowly piece of shit. I already know that. Like, no, why would you? Like, you have to agree at some level that we're all the same intrinsically, not physically, not capabilities, not opportunities, but intrinsically we must be treated with a certain degree of equality. Because given the same voice of sorts doesn't mean we have the voice has the same weight. It just means it has a voice. You have a voice that's just as important as mine, even though I might not take your advice when it comes to, like, fucking, drilling for natural gas, as I would with rhetoric and composition. And just the same as you might not take my voice very, very kindly, but owning a fucking liquor store versus like nutrition and exercise. Like, I have a little bit stronger voice when it comes to that. But my point is that I think a lot of us, I think we should. It's hard for me to believe that anybody would want that kind of a thing going on. But more importantly, that somehow there's a logic that suggests that it's okay. That something, like, where does it come from? Like, where does the logic that comes from says, hey, no, you're really not as good as me intrinsically. And how do you come up with that? Like the argument that people had around the turn of the century about black people, right? They said black people really they're subhumans. That's why we can make the justification that says you can't really vote, you can't really do this. You're really not equal. You're like the monkeys or like some other lower form of animal. We are a higher evolutionary animal. You're almost there. You're not quite there. It's like, so how do you, just because of the way they look, it's obvious they base it just on the way they look. And they came up with real, like, fucking scientific shit. Like, we measured the skull, and it was really fucking fascinating shit. But
we should keep in mind that there's always a complex set of factors that go into how people come to believe those kinds of ideas about other people intrinsically, right? Essentially, part of them is these differences that are physical and that we can that are empirical, that we can see, that appear to be differences that are significant, like skin color and hair texture and eye color, right, and so forth. But really, those are just the superficial markers that we end up placing all of these things on. I think a lot of the other factors historically had to do with imperialism and then the rise of the capitalist state. So these things become the kind of vehicles that allowed the racialized ideas to have even more consequences and weight, right? So you start to, it's like mixing these ideas together and mixing the urges and the desires around capitalism and acquiring capital to then go, oh, we could get a bunch of black people because they're not as good. You see how it's convenient now to say, oh, we need black people from Africa because we can get them to come over and start baling my cotton and doing all my work so that I don't have to do it, and I can get a lot. I can earn a lot more.
My profit margin goes up by a lot.
Yeah, and then of course that historically then creates other factors in the process of doing that on your plantation, creates a process of seeing blacks in a particular way, and because of the conditions that they're in, but not attributing that to the conditions, attributing to their essence.
Right.
Oh, they're all animal-like. They're stupid, and they're not. Well, of course they don't seem as smart as you because you don't let them go to school. You restrict every possible venue, and then you only make them do physical labor, and then you make judgments on them based on
those restrictions.
Right. So of course, and so that
you've imposed.
So I think that there's these complex factors often that you usually have to do with imperialism and capitalism that create they get mixed with these racialized ideas that have these other sources, of course, but that was also the original source. I mean, it's kind of ironic that race as a concept becomes, as we know it today, only becomes visible in Western societies, that is Europe and in America, at right about almost exactly the birth of our nation, 1776.
Why do you think that is?
I think that is because at the couple of decades before that, well, the century before that, it was actually the couple of centuries, if you want to consider all the way back to like when the church was like migrating around the world, but for sure it was building. That what was building globally was this colonial enterprise that where what European powers like Spain and France and Great Britain were building empires, but they were really just starting by colonizing places, going to places like India and then colonizing it and leaving some people there and then subjugating everybody who was the natives who were there, doing the same thing in Africa, doing the same thing in South America.
So basically they were building websites and monetizing them.
Yes.
We got to monetize this shit, people, and how do we do that cheapest?
So once you have that colonizing project set in place for a couple of centuries, right, and you get to 1776, and you have this Enlightenment period of like all these new thinkers and science coming up, you can go, oh, we can prove how lower form Africans are. All we got to do is measure their skulls. And then, so we start putting beads in people's skull, like, after they're dead, put beads in skulls, and then put beads in skulls from Caucasians and go, oh yeah, look, you see there's more beads in this and there's this. What of course, all that sort of pseudoscience around that we found was, Stephen Jay Gould does a great job of talking about this in his book, The Mismeasure of Man. And he shows how even the science was wrong. Like, even if you believed with the premises behind that, it was
just bad science.
Well, the methods they used and the measures they took were all inaccurate. They just they came to the conclusions that they already had predisposed themselves to come to. So there was no way they were going to come to any conclusion except
it wasn't have a hypothesis, collect some data, and
It was in the data collection. Like, he showed how he redid all their work. Like, he looked at the data and they redid it and said, "Oh no, you're wrong. Your math is wrong, man. They didn't even get their math right." So it was not only bad premises, bad science, but bad measurement.
Well, this is what I always talk about. Like, people see what they want to see. They come to the conclusion they want to come to, and that's kind of what you're pointing to. Is like, hey man, they already had this preconceived notions, and I think we do that a lot in our culture even today. You see it on Fox News, you see it on MSNBC, you see it on the news things. You already know that. It's very obvious they have an agenda. Most of them do. Yeah. And the guests, as a matter of fact, a great segue into who you are. So you're a professor at the University of Washington in rhetoric and composition. You focus on. Now, the way I always describe it is like pedagogy, and I'm sure that in writing assessment.
Those are the two main areas, and it's primarily in the field of writing studies. So the teaching of writing and literacy. So that's and for me, my specialty, my area of research specifically is in writing assessment and racism studies. So it's using both of those two fields to think about the way in which we make judgments in and out of writing classrooms around.
And that's kind of the way I describe it with the ethnic identity and racism and so that's why I bring this up, because you recently so you're an expert, you're actually a leader. Most people who don't know anything about academia or English rhetoric, they may not know this. You have a couple of Book of the Year awards. You're tenured at the university there, but you're also, and I'm just going to read off some of these things that I don't, because we're not going to publish your vita here or anything. but just to give people know that you're an expert and you have a certain degree of dominance in this field. You're also chairman of the Four Cs Committee, which is like sort of like I describe it as like the Super Bowl of the English expos or English sort of presentations every year.
It's our national convention
right.
in rhetoric and composition. Yeah. So once a year we get together in a convention. So it's a big.
So it's for a lot of people in the fitness industry, it's like the Olympia of expos or competitions of the year. So it's a big deal, and so you've been honored with that distinction, which is really wonderful. I'm really proud of you for that. But it sets you apart in many ways, and of course you'll be taking a new position next year at the University of Arizona State as assistant dean there in the English department, right, of some sort.
No, actually it's they have a lot of different colleges there that have other departments within them or academic units, and there I will be the associate dean for the College of Integrative Sciences and Arts. So it's an applied science and arts college. So all the majors in that college, they're all like applied. So they're
that's cool.
Building robots and websites,
right,
and stuff like that, and testing them and stuff like that. So as opposed to, so there's another college, which is I think the arts and science, maybe it's arts and sciences or arts and humanities, that has the English, that we have the conventional traditional English department and degrees and so forth in it. I'm of course will be likely affiliated with that because.
So why did they put you there?
Over there is in my field. What?
Why did they put you there instead of?
Well, this was the job. They needed the associate dean for this college. That was the opening.
Oh, okay.
They were advertised for. So. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, but you'll still be doing your research and doing the stuff in the current stuff that you're doing now, like with.
Oh yeah. It doesn't change my research agenda at all. I mean, I still have an agenda because that's the field that I've chosen. And
so the reason I bring all this up was because not too long ago, I remember you calling me, telling me about some stuff that was going on. You had some haters. So we were really it's ironic because I know some of the work you've done. We've talked about it a lot over the years about racism, and I know how passionate you are about equality and racism and human rights. Just like me, everybody who knows me knows the same thing about me too. That I believe in these concepts. I adamantly believe them, even if the people that I stand up for don't recognize it in the same way that I do. And it's because it's not for them; it's for everybody that I believe in this for. But including myself. So it was surprising to me to find out when you recanted the story of these people that sort of latched on to. You have to tell everybody kind of what event happened, and that sort of had some people just like hunting you down on Twitter and on social media, hating on you, telling you you're a racist. I'm like, what? I'm like. Are you talking about the same person? Like, this is you guys obviously don't read the fucking work that he writes and shit, or have ever attended a class or talked to anybody that's ever talked to you. So I was like, actually, tell the story.
Sure. This was maybe a year and a half ago or so.
Because it was like a big deal.
It was. I'm the director of the writing center and the writing program on my campus, which is the Tacoma campus of the University of Washington. So on our campus, we about a year and a half before this incident happened, I was not the director of the writing center, but they had asked me to come in and do some workshops with their professional staff and their student tutors around anti-racist work, because they knew that's the work I did, and anti-racist practices in writing centers, and so we did that work. We read some stuff, we had conversations. This took about 2 quarters, which is about half the year, a little over half the year, and we created an anti-racism and social justice statement that we after we had finished it, we thought it was basically the beliefs that we have around language and social justice and anti-racism that we felt. As a writing center, since we are the center of writing on campus, people come to us to get help with their writing and communication skills and so forth. What do we think our role is, and what do we think we believe about language and its use and its judgment in terms of social justice and racism? So we offered that, and we the current director at the time didn't feel it was appropriate at that moment to put this up on the wall or advertise it. So we left it dormant for about a year until I became the director, and then I put it up. Because I thought it was good work, and most of the folks who had done that work with me, the student tutors and the professional staff, were still there, and we all agreed it was still it resonated with us still, and so we put it up. Then our campuses, it's like their alumni office that does a lot of like outreach and articles and their foundation folks who like basically say, here's all the good stuff that's happening on our campus. Do you want to donate money? Right. So they have an online journal and so forth that does this kind of advertising. So they said, hey, let's do a story on the Writing Center and the anti-racism statement and you, since that's part of your research. And so I said, sure, let's do that. So they did it. And literally 2 days after that article was posted online, I started getting these weird emails from these people I didn't even know, like from Texas and other places in the world, or in the United States. And I'm like, and they're talking as if they know me, and they're calling me names, and they're saying what a bad person I am, and
you're
how
like,
can
who
I
the fuck are you?
And I'm like, what is going on? Then I realized, then I got the message from the foundation folks that, we put this thing up, and we just want you to know we're monitoring the situation.
So what did these people pick up on, and why were they responding so negatively?
They picked up on. So the statement is posted also on the Writing Center's website, and it was also linked in the article that the foundation folks did. So when they did that, they a couple of far right or alt right, however you want to term them, blogs found the article, looked at the statement, and then wrote these sort of hack pieces on it, like basically saying they're saying that they don't teach grammar and that grammar is racist, and this.
But that's not what you guys were saying.
Which is not what we were saying at all. Nevertheless, that's the message they took from it, and that's what they put out there.
That teaching grammar was racist by nature.
Right. That they said, and that was one of the things that they had latched onto, and then they attached it mostly to me, like that I was this quack professor doing, harming all these students at University of Washington, et cetera, et cetera. And so I started getting the emails from them because apparently once one blog gets the news thing, then other blogs basically copy and paste. That's what it was. It literally, and I thought, no, this is actually not only would this be a great thing to show my classes because of how poorly they read the original, but these other blogs, it's a great lesson in plagiarism. These other blogs were just copying and pasting the original blog, and with not even referencing the previous one where they got the information from, right?
So they didn't have good journalistic integrity.
No
journalistic integrity. We're just trying to get flash news out to people so people will read.
Viewers, they wanted eyeballs on screens. So they knew this was a hot story. So they did.
And you talk about racism, and all of a sudden, it's like everybody wants to listen to it.
Yeah, so literally like wildfire, this news spread from one blog to one blog to one blog, like in a matter of a week. And then radio stations, and then Tucker Carlson from Fox News, his producers got a hold of me and wanted me to go on his show and talk about it. And I'm like, whoa, so I let all those requests and all those things go through our foundation and media folks who are specialists in this area. And we talk carefully about a strategy that would protect me and the university and the students who work at the Writing Center, because we didn't want them to be harmed or harassed, because the emails I was getting were like, some of them were just mean and racist and harmful. They calling me racist names. They would, some of them even would how do I put it?
Say it, man.
They said they were going to hurt my family. And
really? They threatened, like, these were like, that's a federal offense. You can't threaten somebody like that, and that's a federal offense, man.
They were doing so. And there were also some. There were. I got a couple hundred tweets my direction from people that did the same thing. So I just blocked all those folks because it didn't. They were clearly trolling the Twitter for like hot words like racism and this, and then they would attack that person, basically not knowing anything about me, or it was clear they didn't know anything about me or about what we do here at the University of Washington on Tacoma branch. So that and it was pretty intense. Like, you don't realize how psychologically draining and difficult.
I remember talking to you.
Positive, yeah. Even if you're a very positive person like I am, and I'm an optimist. I try to see the good in everybody, and I'm not one who gets in bouts of depression or anything like that. But this is the first time, like, I felt like I would wake up and when I felt bad, I didn't feel good. Like, and it was a weird experience for me so it was the first time in my life I realized I need to do some self-care. I need to get off of, not look at this email, not to get away for the weekend and not contact anybody. So that's what I did that a couple of times over the next 6 months or so, because until everything died down. I even had our campus security monitor my classroom, because I had at that quarter I was teaching a night class. So my class didn't end until like almost 10 o'clock at night. And I was worried about my students and myself, because it's not hard to find out, where I'm at.
Yeah, well,
and I didn't want some nut job coming, to confront me or my class or something, about this. And so the folks on our campus were really good about all this stuff, protecting me and my students and so forth. So
the iron
of it, but it was a crazy thing. But it started because there's preconceived ideas about when you use these trigger words like racism and white supremacy, you get this from a certain element of people in the United States, because they have historical and psychological wounds that they have not addressed. And it centers around their whiteness. And when they can't see it, it starts to, and they think it, they lash out, and they think it's you're the problem, not me. And I'm like, what we don't understand is, no, we are all part of the problem. And once we start seeing that, we can start addressing the real issues, which are larger and structural and historic, and they have nothing to do with your fucking opinion or your goddamn purpose or intention. I just don't care about that. I don't care about changing somebody's heart. I'm not going to try to do that. What I'd rather do is change structures that affect people's hearts.
Right.
How to live and act and breathe and behave and practice day to day.
Give people an opportunity to be the good, like the way I would put it is, give people the opportunity to be able to be the good person that we know that we all really want to be. I mean, I am pretty sure that most of those people, what was that?
I said, or that they think they are already.
Right.
You gotta, giving someone the opportunity to be the good person that they know that they are, really means you gotta set up conditions, structures that allow them to do that, and not allow them to hurt people constantly.
Right.
And just because they've got the privilege to not have to see that, to like go, I don't have to look at race, I don't have to look at those things. Yeah, you don't have to, but other people don't get a fucking choice. Like, they have to look, because that's their damn existence. So it's awfully fucking insensitive of you to, like, just because you can ignore it, everybody else can ignore it. Like, they don't get that privilege.
Right.
That privilege.
I've had that conversation with people before, not quite so succinctly, but this idea that just because you don't experience life a certain way doesn't mean that other people don't, and they don't have to confront this every day. And like you said, it's insensitive for anyone to sit there and diminish somebody else's experience just because you don't have it.
Right, and it's also harmful. It's because it perpetuates systems that are inherently unfair, and that set up bad systems, bad things for some people, and great things for other people. So
I have this unique, I don't know if you experienced this, because even though we're identical twins, we definitely have experienced life very differently. I have had this really unique luxury in my life because I am in the public eye to a certain degree within the fitness industry for essentially a couple of decades now. It's really interesting for me to be able to see how people see me, because they'll reflect it back at me. They'll tell me, like, oh, and one of the things I find interesting when it pertaining to race, growing up, you and I, we looked very Asian, like very, very Asian, like so. And I keep
or Mexican, depending on where.
Depending on where you're. But we looked.
I used to tell people that all the time. I'm like, it's not just that I'm ambiguously ethnic, like, but it's that I am ethnic in context. So if I'm with a bunch of Mexicans, I am Mexican.
Right.
If I'm with a bunch of Ecuadorians, I'm Ecuadorian. If I'm with Puerto Ricans, I'm Puerto Rican. Like, it's just that simple.
Well, the same, exactly. And we even look.
I should clarify. I don't mean that I actually am. I mean I'm perceived as such.
Right.
That people see me as, because in context, we are we can be quite ethnically ambiguous. And
right.
so,
Which is exactly where I was going with it, was because I have experienced this sort of diversity of ethnic identities that people sort of place on me, when in reality I'm not. But growing up, I felt definitely some racism. We called names like Jap and fucking Beaner and all kinds of other bullshit that you and I both experienced growing up. And by the way, growing up in a state of Nevada, which really isn't a state you typically think of as something that's homogeneously white or anything like that, but definitely had its issues.
Well, historically that doesn't matter. And in fact, historically in the United States, the larger populations of color that you have in an area, the more racism you'll find.
I would agree with that 100%. That's my experience as well.
It's the white anxiety. It's whites who are already in power, have control of certain things in that community, that become anxious because they think they're losing it, even if they don't want to admit that. But that is historically what has been the case. It was that way in California. It's that way in Nevada. It was that way in Arizona. Texas.
How does that anxiousness manifest itself?
Say again?
How does that anxiousness manifest itself? Because I'm curious about this.
Well, it's very contingent on the situation. So, like, for example, in the early history of California, where when you had, this was right after California was annexed by the United States, and previously it was Mexico, right? Mexico was like all the way up to the...
That was all like Mexican farmers, man. They owned all that shit.
Yeah, they owned all that.
And all that shit was stolen. We fucking stole that shit from them. We didn't buy it.
We not only stole it by force, but we stole it by law. So they did a number of complicated...
bunch of goddamn thieves.
Yeah, then demonized the Mexicans.
And then demonized the Mexicans, yeah.
And now to the point now.
And now we want to build a fucking wall and not let them back in.
Exactly. So that's why, like, I think the idea of building a wall in the place that we're saying, let's just assume that border, the idea of building a wall today completely ignores the history of where Mexicans and Native and Indigenous Native Americans have been and where they have always been. It ignores all of that, and that is that's really problematic for me. I mean, it's also unethical. It's because we as the U.S. as an entity stole all that shit and did it really unethically. Made pacts and treaties with indigenous tribes, made agreements. What was that called? The Treaty of Guadalupe in Mexico, and then backtracked on all of that. Like we went back on just about every single treaty possible that we could have, simply because we wanted stuff. And we felt we were entitled to it, like, right, as a country.
That's that imperialism. That's very strong imperialism that kind of runs through,
which is that's interlaced with racism. It says,
tell me again, how does this sort of manifest itself? This uneasiness or this anxiety, this white anxiety that you're talking about? Because this is the first I really have discussed this or talked about this in this context.
So, well, I mean, it's complicated because depending on where you're at and what is that issue. Will show what manifests, right? So,
right.
There's I think he's a sociologist and researcher named Pierre Vanderberg, who coined this term, which I really like, and it's called Herrenvolk republicanism. And Herrenvolk republicanism for him is this dynamic in which the social pressure, and then social pressure can be jobs, it can be getting rid of unions, it can be any number of things. But it's a social pressure downward. So there's always a hierarchy in society. It could be by class, it could be by race, it could be by gender, it could be by religion. It can manifest itself in a number of ways. It could be intersectional. It could be a number of complex of those things. But regardless, there is a hierarchy, and in this case, we're talking about a racial hierarchy, and that becomes where there's already a known somebody on top. And when those on the bottom begin to put pressure to, like, take privileges and rights and other things that seem to be firmly in the location of the dominant group, the dominant group then puts pressure back down onto it and does a number of things. The most popular strategy has been divide and conquer. So you take a group like, let's say, working class people in America, regardless of race, right? So blacks, whites, cross all those things. And you divide them by race, and you say, no, if you're white, you're better than blacks, right? So think about just post-Civil War in the South, when you have now all these free black men who are available for labor. Now you have to pay for your plantation of labor, and you also have free white men to do that same labor. Now, if you just came out of a slavery system, who are you going to hire, right? Well, if you're just going to go by your racist past, you're going to hire the white guys, right? Because you'd rather give your money to the white guys. But if you're savvy, and they all were, we can pay the black guys less than the white guys, and that means we preserve more of our bottom line, right? So that pits black labor against white labor in there, when really it's labor against the capitalist, against the plantation owner. That's the real thing, because that person is the one who's dictating the shitty conditions that you have to live in, whether you're white or black, and controls government and controls the laws that dictate all this stuff and make it happen.
And they're also sounds like they're also to a certain degree controlling some of the dialogue between the races. In other words, saying that you're better than you. Well, who's making the judgment call? Why are you an expert on determining what the intrinsic value of an individual is? Just because of how much you can pay them?
Right. So they give them this sort of cultural capital, right? Like the cultural capital of being white. You're at least white. You're not. you might be poor, but at least you're white, right? And so this manifests itself in social things like that. This is why it was such a big deal. Why blacks couldn't drink out of the same drinking fountains or sit in the same fucking restaurants. Like, you think, what is the big deal, right? Like, how is that a problem, right? But it was, and that's because it was the social capital that what they wanted to preserve, because that was all that was left for poor whites and for working class whites, because they certainly weren't getting any benefits.
So now I'm not better than anybody? No, you're still the same piece of shit you were when you woke up this morning.
So I think that is there's this kind of Herrenvolk republicanism, this downward pressure in different venues. Here it's a case of social things that some get to do and some don't get to do. It doesn't mean anything to your bottom line, right? It doesn't give you any more money. It doesn't give you a new house. It doesn't do any of that. What it does is it creates this imbalance. It creates a division. There's a division. It's race. It's because they're black and you're white, and the white is better, the black isn't, and et cetera. But in reality, they're fighting. There's a common enemy, if we know that, we know. If you think about it, just in terms of numbers, just in terms democratically, are there more poor people than there are rich people? Yes, there are, right? So by those numbers, wouldn't you think that in this country we would have laws and politicians who supported outright things like programs and issues and things that would protect and help bolster poor people, like, for instance, public support stuff, right? Making sure that everybody has insurance, health insurance, right. Not this. But we don't.
Well, I think you can make the same case that people do this with economics as well, right? Like, I mean, they're doing it with the economic strata. When you stratify how much people make, or how much they're worth, or their net worth, or how much they have, or how much they have available to them, then all of a sudden you go, like, I'm better than this person, and I deserve better things because I have access to more resources. And I have a problem with this. Because everybody wants to use the argument, well, who's going to pay for it? Like, why should I pay for somebody else's stuff? Well, wait a minute. Why shouldn't you pay for it? Isn't it? What would you? And I hate to use the kind of lame example, but it's a good example. So if you walked by somebody bleeding on the street, would you just walk by? Like, would you just don't we want to be a country or a culture of good people who care about each other, or do you just want to give a shit about the people who give a shit about you? Because that's usually like this many people for most people. Like, you want to care, you only want. You know what I mean? Like,
I think this is like a contradiction. I think that you're identifying. That is that I think most people would say, no, I do care. I wouldn't walk past that person, right?
But I'm not going to pay for their fucking health care.
Right. But then turn around and say a contradictory thing, like, I'm not going to pay for their health care. But I think, and that's because of the nature of how we've set that argument up.
Well, they structure it like, this person's out to get my bottom line. This person's out like they're cheating the system. They're not working hard. They're lazy. I think that's the rhetoric that wraps up the logic. So here's what I'm thinking.
In the example you gave, which I think is a good one, because it highlights this problem. Though, when you say, would you walk by someone who's in need, right? Would you not help that person that you're standing there and this person's bleeding?
You can directly see the need.
here's why people would probably do that. I'm going to be generous about it. Most people would help that person. The reason they would help them is because they see their humanity.
Right.
They see that's a real
it's
person.
Like, could be me.
Really needs help, and I can help them. And
Yeah.
it feels good to help, and it's in my DNA to help people. It's good
Right.
for me, and it's good for that person. It's good for the community, and therefore I should help because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
But in the abstract, I'm not going to give my money because all I really see and experience is me and my family, and I earn this money, and I work really hard, and I know I work really hard. And
Fear.
Give it away.
That's fear.
And
It's a fear-based mentality. To me, it's fear-based mentality.
It's also a decision based on just numbers and abstractions.
Right.
It's not based on the real story or the.
Well, they all seem to echo this sentiment that I'm losing something. And you might lose a few extra dollars, but we are gaining so much more as a society. And I hate to say that, sounds cliche, but there's so much more that we gain. So if everybody, if everyone had their needs met in this way, like their health care and all these kinds of good jobs, good income, even if it meant that the ultra wealthy or some people, there was a leveling of the field. And I'm not saying to just take away people's shit. No, but there's got to be some. But maybe there is, and maybe there's not. It doesn't matter. But even if there were a leveling of that economic field of sorts, it's not going to be great. It's not going to be a lot. But isn't it worth it? I don't think it's worth it to me to have a society that has, let's just call the society 100 people. And out of those 100 people, 2 people, they got nothing. They're living at the behest of others. They're getting the scraps, the handouts, or they're dying. And then 10 people have a lot. They have most of everything, really. They got like 60% of the resources they got. It's theirs. Then everybody else is fighting for the rest. Now, those rest, they can live okay. They can eat. But wouldn't we rather have everyone level up everyone?
I think what you're getting at is the sense that the realization that we all are connected.
Yes.
That your destiny, my destiny, and those across people we don't even know across the globe are all connected. And in however you want, we can think of it metaphysically, we can think of it very physically, we can think of it as materially, like literally you poison the water and air of India in India, and it will get to us in the United States eventually. It is people dying over there matters because it matters. If we're just thinking selfishly, it matters because they equate to people dying over here eventually at some point.
I get it. It just seems like it's kind of obvious to me that we sometimes, like you're right, yeah, we abstract it and then we kind of don't. And then we use these really bullshit excuses. Like when I hear them, I think bullshit. It's like you're not losing shit. No one's asking you to fucking pay for somebody else's fucking appendectomy. Like it's not what's fucking going on. It's like it'll mean like $5 maybe. Maybe it means more, but maybe it doesn't. But who cares? Like I don't want money to go there. You know what your money's really going to? If you really knew what your money was really being spent on, you'd probably want to fucking throw up. Because if you really, really knew what your fucking tax dollars were going to pay for, because it's not going to pay for the shit you think it is probably.
Right.
But my point is that I heard Joe Rogan say this as well, and he agrees. I think he kind of has the same sensibility that I'd pay a little bit more, absolutely pay more. But what I really want to pay for is a fucking society that works a little bit better, where I don't have to hear about people who don't get good health care.
I think the problem is what a lot of people might be doing when it comes to this, when making these kinds of decisions and seeing like social welfare programs or social programs, which equates to obviously tax dollars, right? What I think they see is they measure the success of any program like that, like Obamacare. They measure the success of Obamacare by the past. And
they also measure by the worst fucking story.
Right, but the past is a flawed system that is not, and what you're talking about is a very different kind of system. That if we really did help each other, really did protect, we really were more equitable, and et cetera, then nobody would have a problem.
Right.
It would because
they're not going to care.
the product of those things, the consequences of those things
Yeah.
are so much better. That
Well,
we're
the
like,
better-
how can we possibly think about going in this other direction? Why would we want to be so selfish? Not be, being more selfless or helping our neighbor or whatever is so much better. Like we get so many more benefits from these things. Yeah.
That's exactly it. I think that it's short-sighted.
I think that's why countries like Sweden and Denmark have the highest levels of citizen satisfaction. Like they've done this.
Actually, there was a guy, I think we were talking about it earlier. He was on Joe Rogan's show, is Van Himbel. Anyways, he really wonderful psychologist who did some study on the social. He wrote a book called The Social Leap, and talking about how we were talking about how we came out of the trees, and then started to become upright, and what kinds of biological and intellectual innovations, and how they came about. And one of the things that seemed to be bearing out in all the research and studies that says that in order to what's the most biological advantage? What way of thinking is the most biological way to advantage? Is it being aggressive? Is it being strength, raw strength, or what is it, right? And you know what it is? Fucking collaboration. Collaboration. When we collaborate, when we give up some of what we want to accomplish something and help others get what they want, everybody succeeds. And it's like, and they become the dominant, stronger forces. And they become the rulers, the top of the food chains. Like, not the people who are pulling for their own weight I want to just overpower them with strength. No, that doesn't work. That's very, very limited. And it's like collaboration. Collaboration works the best. I thought that was so enlightening because it's like, okay, this is exactly what we're talking about. Are we trying to separate ourselves and pit ourselves against people, whether it be by racism or whether it be by sexual orientation or whether it be by religious beliefs? Divide and conquer, that doesn't, or do we collaborate and work together?
But I think I think you're right. But the question is, how do we get to that point? Right? You're
Dialogue. You got to keep
also the process by which we get to the ideal.
I think part of it is the idea is how are we talking to each other? That's the first thing. Is like you got to be able to talk to each other. Got to be able to communicate with each other. If we're not speaking to each other in ways where we're both opening ourselves to new understandings, or at least accepting that, having some kind of empathy towards another person. And that's critical. We have to be able to not only talk to one another, but at least accept, not come to a conversation with the idea, which is what I think most people do, of ramming my perspective down your throat until you agree. Like, that does not work.
Yeah, like I know some colleagues who do some research on ways in which people argue. And how culturally, like how it's different in some places. And you remind me of this one thing that I've been thinking a lot about over the last maybe 10 years or so in my classroom, my writing classroom, so where I teach argument or asked to teach argument. So the typical European Western way of teaching argument is how do I win the argument? Right? It's basically the Greco-Roman version of it, right? So it's how do you win, right? There's different ways to do it, and there's different strategies. Aristotle called it the rhetoric wasn't simply the art of persuasion, but it was the finding the available means of persuasion, right? So what are the available ways in which I can win whatever I'm trying to, whatever winning means, right? Persuading or getting the right number of votes or whatever it is. What that is an agonistic metaphor for having a conversation about something or making a decision, right? So it's I win or they win, or I win or I lose, or they win or they lose. And so when you have a zero-sum game and you're win or lose, it's
I know I'm telling you to switch your mic back. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't. I tried to switch that back, but I can't.
It's you go to your settings again. Sorry, technical difficulties. Easy to fix.
Well, you can go. It says it's on my built-in microphone.
Oh, maybe when you put in that piece, that headset, it
automatically. How is this? Is this better? This says it's the default device. I don't know what that means.
Oh, it's just when your mic hits your clothes, I can hear them. I don't want to.
How is that?
Go ahead and touch it. Yep. Still? Yeah. You can hear it, yeah. Yeah, you can hear the mic. Yeah. You should be able to change it on your settings, under sound.
I did, and it says default, and it says built-in microphone. I thought that was the one.
Internal.
I don't get that option. Still?
Yeah, you're still on that, yeah. So on the input, if you click on the input, Sound, go to the sound in not in the app, but on your operating system. Go to your settings, go to sound.
It says external microphone. Oh, I don't get an internal one option.
Oh.
Why don't I get, when I plug this in, I don't get the
It should say, there should be one that says internal microphone built in.
Hold on, let me unplug this, see what happens.
Okay.
So,
Yep. See, you're back sounding good again.
so, but now you can hear.
Well, no.
What's that? How are you? Or do you have yours plugged into your thing?
Yeah. I have mine plugged in. Well, mine's a little different setup, but it's not plugged into my computer the same way yours is. It's going through a small switch.
Yeah, I know, but it won't let me. Like when I plug that in, it doesn't give me any options to change.
But you can still hear me good?
I can hear you fine. I just
Okay, good.
just have feedback.
Oh, there's none. There isn't. You don't have, your system is good enough. There's no feedback. So we're good. So sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Go ahead. So go what you were saying?
What were we talking about now?
Sorry, that was my fault for derailing the. I think you were talking about some of these, the dialogue, having this kind of open dialogue, so that
the Western ways of arguing. So
yeah,
the cool research that I've seen recently in the last few years comes from this dude, a colleague of mine who I really like. His name is Barry Kroll, and he's done this work on. He's been a long time practitioner of Aikido, Japanese martial arts. And the philosophy, and he took the philosophies of Aikido and some of their practices and turned them into ways to think about quote unquote arguing.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. So if you know anything about Aikido, you know that one of the main tenets of Aikido philosophically is to protect your attacker. So when someone attacks you, it's not about winning the fight. It's about making sure that both parties are safe.
Ooh, now, I like that.
This came from this. I forget the guy's name. He gives Kroll gives a bit of a history of this. After World War II and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this guy who was this world-class martial arts dude said, "I can't continue living my life and doing this thing that I do, the martial arts, which is an art form based on attacking people, knowing what
hurting people,
knowing what I know now." And experiencing what I experienced in this war. And it was mostly the bombing of his country, right? So he said, I'm going to rethink my entire philosophy and all of the, so he literally made Aikido. He made Aikido, and then it became, popular. And when you see, like, you can see this Aikido, the performances, I've shown him in my classes, and they look like this dance that almost looks choreographed and
right.
It's not fake, it's real. It's just changing your orientation in the world and to the attack.
So really, this is very, very similar to changing perspectives.
Exactly. So
change your perspective, and what you percenge will change.
Exactly.
That's exactly what happens.
What he's saying is you have to. What Kroll uses how he translates this into argument in classrooms is he says you have to face like Aikido. You have to face the world like your attacker is facing.
Yes, take their position.
He says it can't be this.
No.
This is the Western way. One guy, my thing's right, no, I'm right. And this is, all that happens is everyone gets hurt. Instead, there are like these arrows, and he says, if this guy's coming this way, you change, and you direct the same way, and now we both move in a slightly different way.
Right, I like this. Oh, man, this is beautiful.
It's like, it's not about winning. It's about changing. First, you have to show good faith and change your orientation to the world. Literally face the world and see what they're seeing. And then you both will move in a different direction. So it's a bit more complicated than that, but the bottom line is it's a very non-Western way of thinking about dialogue and argument and persuasion and so forth.
Wow.
Oh, here's my son.
Hey, what up?
Hey, Kiyoshi. You're on my new podcast, man.
Yep.
Called get back in frame. Hey, there we are. You're on my new podcast. This is Handle Your High with Tadayoshi. HYH. Handle Your High, motherfucker. Talking about different perspectives. What are you doing, man?
Just got back home from work.
This is my brother's son, Kiyoshi. I remember that when this kid was born. It just seems a little surreal to even think of that shit. Like, you were like this big, man. Like this big.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I know. I remember when we organized your your videos based on color and your books when you were like, I don't know, it was like maybe, I don't know, it was like 2004?
Was that
When
in
you,
Pullman?
It was in Pullman, when you were in Pullman. Got a good shirt on, David Bowie. Pretty awesome. There you go. Good one. Get a Freddie Mercury shirt, man. Rock it.
Okay.
That's real life, baby. That's real life right there. All right, cool. What was you? I don't know what we were saying before. Oh yeah, Aikido. I like this. I like the idea of. See, I always understood Aikido to be like you. It's like directing energy. But it very much. But so one could say that an Aikido way of argumentation would be of redirecting dialogue, redirecting perspective. So you take on a.
Yeah, I think it, at least the way I understand it, is that it really is about where it starts for me. At least for me, it's having compassion for those who don't yet have compassion for you, which means you try to see the world and the argument that they're making in on their terms, and showing them that you can do that, right? So, and then that creates the conditions or the grounds for everyone to change. So maybe I change a little bit, my ideas, and maybe they change a little bit, but we're not doing this head-on, face-to-face smackdown where everybody gets hurt. You know what I mean? So I think I think it is, in one sense, it does mean we all change our perspectives, but in another sense, it means for me, it's rooted in a deep, real, pragmatic sense of compassion.
I like that. I like it. I've never heard of this before. It's hard, right? Someone who's attacking you, who means to win the day, whatever that might mean, that's difficult to have compassion for that person. You're in opposition, right? Like you're in opposition to this person. So you either it's win. There's only three options: win, lose, or draw, right?
Yeah, well, right, and I think I think this way of thinking about argumentation is suggesting that is a false set of choices,
or at least at the very least it's flawed.
It's flawed because I'll say it's structured. We have structured our ways of engaging with each other that way historically, and therefore it's hard for us to see that there's any third, fourth, fifth, sixth option on the table. It's difficult. In fact, when somebody tries to do that, they look weak. Right.
Right.
They don't look like they're making a very good argument.
That's one of the things that I wanted to bring up, was that part of the show, which is handle your high, which is like, manage your own feelings, manage your own life, manage your own ideas, and part of that means don't get too offended, don't take it personally when somebody holds something different than you, because it doesn't have anything to do with you usually, and even if it does, it still has nothing to do with you. It's not your idea. It's like, but some people have a hard time with it. They have a very hard time sort of like taking on, because they do see it as weakness. They say like, oh, if I acquiesce and I agree with this person that it's a good idea, then somehow the weight of my argument loses ground.
And I think the trouble is what's difficult to see in that heat of the moment, in that heat of the debate or whatever it is, that we can easily slip into the mode of guarding our position and guarding our own, whether it's claims or assumptions or ideas, not questioning them very, very deeply or at all, simply to not do it because we feel like we have to win, right? That's a biological imperative. You got to win. I got to win. I got to, otherwise I'm going to lose. And if I lose, I'm going to die. And that's just, and of course we know that's not, of course we're not going to die. We get too attached to our ideas because we think that we have to win for some reason. Right. And I think that I'm not going to say I'm perfect at this, but I've over probably the last decade have slowly detached myself from the need to win, the need to have the last word, the need to be.
That's a tough one, man. Those are tough. Those are tough because I think you're right. Culturally, we're sort of. This is the way that we are sort of enculturated to have argumentation and to argue. But more importantly, it's also the kind of people take it really fucking personal. They think that if I lose an argument, it somehow degrades me as a person or somehow strikes against me.
It's just not true.
It's not true at all. Not even by a long shot.
It's just what we feel is true, right?
We feel right.
We live so much in this narrative about like our lives in our heads that we think that that's part of that narrative, right? We say, I got to win this. I got to be the one who wins because I'm right. Or if I'm not right, at least I got to make sure that everyone sees that thinks that I'm right. And I think that's is the source of some of this angst. A lot of folks just can't give that up.
Well, I've been doing, like, recently I've been doing a lot of work with understanding ego and what that really, really means. I'm not talking about like, hey, I'm fucking cool, not that kind of necessarily, that kind of, although that's a part of ego. I'm mainly talking about, there's two concepts that I've been talking a lot about lately and doing a lot of work with. It's time and ego, because time is a human construct. It's not real. It's something we've constructed as a way to understand our experience better. And ego, which is, and I'm defining ego from the standpoint of its needs. And it has a need is a bad word, but it's a good way to describe it. Ego has this desire or need to be right, to be offended, to be separate, to be superior, to be inferior, and to have fear or anxiety and worry. These are the trappings of the ego that we experience. And when people get offended, it's the ego talking. It's because, and I would say it this way, it means you don't know who you are. If you knew who you were, you wouldn't care so much, because it doesn't change whether somebody wins an argument or loses an argument, so to speak. And I'm just using win and lose. I don't think people really win or lose arguments. I think ideas are ideas. But let's just say you win or lose one. Either which way it goes, it doesn't change you. The only thing that changes you is you. If you decide to take a position that gets offended, then you're changing your experience. You're doing it, not the other person, not anybody else. I remember coming home from school when I was like 7, 8 years old, when we were going to, I think it was, what was that grade school that we went to, that we would ride our bikes or walk to school when we lived in the trailer park and on, I can't remember our address. Pecos Park in Las Vegas. And we went to that little elementary school. And I remember coming home from school one day, and some kids were making fun of me. They were calling me names and shit. And I'm like, fuck this shit. And my mom said we weren't allowed to fight in school. So I came home and I'm like, Mom, these kids are making fun of me. Like, what do? It's like, I want to kick their ass. I want to kick this motherfucker's ass. Like, I want to be. and she's like, no. I was like, she said, well, is what they're saying, is it true? And I'm like, no, of course not. He's calling me names. Well, then what does it make a difference? It's like, does him saying it make it true? Well, no.
I think, like what we started with earlier on, what we were talking about, people saying stuff, especially on social media, that gets repeated over and over and over again. It can be act like it's true, right?
Right.
Like people can start, and so I think that's part of like what the urge for folks to to retaliate, because they don't want.
They want to defend. They're back in that offensive defensive mode. And I agree, totally agree. That's why you never hear me. I made a post a couple of weeks ago around Halloween, and it had this funny image. I just found it on Twitter. Somebody posted it, and it's not new. It was like had been done last year. Some family with this guy and his wife and his 2 kids, his daughter and his son, and they had these furry suits on. They look like those pajamas, little, you get those little onesies, and they're all furry. I thought they were, to be honest, I fucking thought they were bunnies. They were all like a family of bunnies. But they all had genitalia and all this stuff. It was like furry genitalia. It was like real, not real, but it was part of the suits. And they all did. The little kids had genitalia, didn't have hair. The mom had the little furry bush, and the dad had like this penis thing going on. And it was like, and the daughter was going kind of like going like this, pointing at her dad, or kind of touching the furry, and then everybody got offended. And they're like, and I was called a fucking pedophile by some person online, like, oh, you posted you're a pedophile. And I'm like going, what the fuck? Where are you jumping to these fucking conclusions? I just thought it was fucking hilarious. And my comment on the post was, my hat's off to this family for really embracing their natural, the comedic side. I was like, this is funny shit. I don't care who you are. This is funny shit. I didn't say pedophiles are funny. I didn't say that was a funny topic. I didn't say that I endorsed any of that stuff, but everybody jumped onto this, and it's like they created their own narrative around it based on what they already had going on with inside them, and they extrapolated and expressed it onto me, and I didn't, and I'm like, well, I didn't feel like I was not going to sit there and defend myself on this stuff, so I just took the post down, because I'm like, I don't need this bullshit. Like, I just thought it was funny. You guys don't think it's funny. Delete. And so I didn't. But afterwards, I will have to admit, I wanted to feel offended. I wanted to be like, why should I have to meter my voice at all? Like, fuck you. If you have a problem with it, fucking don't read it. Don't listen to it. Don't do anything with it. Like, what the fuck's my problem? It's not my problem. It's your problem. Like, but I fell into the trap, I think, of just like of acquiescing and changing my voice because of it. Because I didn't really see, actually, to be perfectly honest, when I first initially posted it, I didn't see the little girl touching it, but she apparently looked like it was touching it wasn't even his dick. It was just like it was like a facsimile on the suit. It was a furry suit, and it was like, it looked like kind of a furry little penis with balls or whatever. I don't know. It was just part of the picture. And she was kind of like going, but I think people got offended because in their minds, this is what it conjures up. But just because it conjures up this shit for you doesn't mean it conjures up that shit for anybody else. And I think that this is one of those things I think there is no idea or concept or image or anything that I think should be off limits. We need to have a dialogue about everything. And if there's a group of people that feel uncomfortable about something, that speaks to what's going on inside of you, not me, the poster, you, the person perceiving it. If you feel something's wrong or get offended, you need to look inside yourself and you need to ask the questions about, why do I feel so offended? What is it within me? It's not me, man, motherfucker. I didn't do shit to you, okay? But more importantly, I can't do anything if I wanted to. I couldn't do any of that stuff. I don't have that kind of power in the cosmic universe to make anybody anything. If I did, I would make myself a bazillionaire and just be done with it. Like, just ride around in Lamborghinis all day and bang hot chicks and fucking drink beer and smoke weed, and that's what I want to do all day. But no, that's not what it is. No, I'm just really joking. I really wouldn't do that. Although I would do that sometimes. I would probably do that sometimes. Just not all the time. But I just thought that that's the kind of stuff that I'm like going,
Well, I think
I want an open dialogue. I want a true open space where people I'm not saying people go out there and vomit out all their garbage that they just think is shock value, like Howard Stern or something. I'm talking about something that's really intelligent or at least under something that's funny, brevity. I think that we need to have this dialogue. If somebody had a real issue, I think it would have been rather said, hey, don't you think this is bad to show? Here's why I think. Okay, I could have a conversation about that, but call me a pedophile? Like, you don't know me, lady. Like, what the fuck is your problem? It's like, who fucking pissed in your fucking post toasties this morning? Like, I didn't. Like, I don't know. It's like, but to me, that just screamed because it's obvious. I didn't know this person at all. I didn't even interact with.
I think part of this comes back to see what we want to see. She made.
Well, there's that famous picture of the chalice. When you see a chalice or two faces. There's those, and it's both.
Well, right, but I mean, what's common? Or I should say, one way to think about like deciphering the messages, the symbolic messages we get in our world every day, is that we bring just as much information to that message, whether it's a picture or a music or an essay or an article or a book. We bring just as much information to that as we get in the source itself. Meaning, that whatever the message, quote unquote, is of that, we have conjured at least half of it. I, as a reader of that message, has conjured at least half of it. So we'd have to think. I think that the questions you're asked, you're wanting that person to ask, are good ones to ask to make sure. Wait a minute. Is it because there's a chance that there could be a pedophilic like message being sent out.
Right.
So we could get that. We go that, and that could be offensive, and I think that should be offensive to people. And people should call that out when they see it.
Absolutely, I agree.
However, the first question should be: is this? How do I know this is? What am I reading in this that makes it such for me?
To me, it just I want
something in me that.
Well, everybody. My first thought when that shit came up when I think it was one or two people that sort of mentioned this. I wanted to say, were you fucking raped as a child or something? Like, what was going on? Like, because that did not occur to me. I have a daughter. We taken showers together when she was a babe, when she was young, and stuff. Even though we don't really do that now, but we took baths together. This is like this is not like, and it was nothing. There's no sexual, obviously.
Well, I think the problem, the difficulty is that in this day and age, because of the way capitalism reproduces overly sexualized images of the naked body, usually female body.
Right.
That any kind of reference to the naked female body or the naked male body is
sexual.
Sexual reference.
Right.
And it's not right. It's absolutely wrong because the body isn't necessarily a sexualized thing. It just has turned into that.
Right. That's one aspect of it.
Right, it's one aspect, but it is not inherently just that.
No.
And a naked form doesn't have to be a sexual symbol or a sexual.
Right, I 100% agree.
So, and I think that's part of what you were laughing at, is that you could laugh at this.
It was a funny ass costumes, man. They were funny. They were funny that they did it. It was hilarious to look at, I thought.
So I think that the person who the angry poster, the troll that you got there was one who wasn't able to be aware enough to see that her context around her, the capitalist society that overproduces sexualized images and actually almost only produces the naked form as a sexualized image, couldn't see the influence that had on her. That now all she can see is pedophilia. Naked form equals sex.
Right.
There's a child and an older and an adult, pedophilia. That's
right.
Which, yeah, if the naked form was only sexual, yeah, absolutely. But it's not.
It's not.
Especially anyway. So
I think, in a side comment, I think the reason why there's a curiosity with children, it's natural to be curious about the naked form anyways, the body, because we own these things. We walk around these flesh bags. And so it's natural to be curious at that age, because she was probably in the age of, I want to say she was probably 8, 9-ish. So maybe a little younger, maybe, but not older than that. But one of the reasons why she may have been so curious enough to actually point out or touch or this sort of appendage on her father's costume was because of all the over-sexualization, because it's been so sort of puritanically sort of guarded away from our consciousness in our experience in this world oh my God, what is that? What Dad got hanging there? Because I've seen my daughter when she was younger. She'd see me get a shower, and she kind of. And I remember her once, she says, this was years ago. She was probably maybe 6 years old. She says, Daddy, she was looking, I got out of the shower, she was looking at me, and she kind of noticed that I had different parts, and she says, Daddy, you have a big wee-wee. Cause she don't got none. There's nothing there. So to me, hers was, I was sort of unusual. But, so anyways, it was kind of funny. Whoops.
My wife is here.
Oh.
Kelly? Okay, now she's coming.
So anyways, I just thought that it was kind of fun. But she was very curious. And I said, men and women, boys and girls have different parts for that kind of thing. And I said, this is what I got. This is what you got. It's natural, but I keep it very comfortable, keep it very easy. I don't think there's anything wrong with being inquisitive or anything wrong with the human form. I think it's beautiful. What I do think is wrong is for somebody else to tell me that has to be my idea about it. No, I don't have to see the life the same way you do. I don't have to look at something and say, this cannot be funny. I look at pictures of Charles Manson, I think it's fucking hilarious. He fucking got a swastika on his fucking forehead. What an idiot. What? That's fucking hilarious. Now, granted, it's not funny to some people. Okay, I'll give people that. It's what he did. And
that is the healthy paradox that we have to live with. I mean, that is, if we're always confronting those kinds of paradoxes in the way we think and see and make meaning in the world, that I think we're going to be in a better place. We're going to be in a more compassionate and more a place that allows us to be able to have the kind of assuming the other person's perspective that is not ours. Doesn't mean you have to accept and believe all that they believe and accept. It just means that you should probably be able to see that swastika is funny and is a symbol of hate and horribleness and awfulness and represents a lot of things that are very harmful to some people. So I think, but all those things ought to exist so that because without them we wouldn't understand how horrible or how great or how funny or how not so funny it is.
It just inside me, I just screams whenever I hear people getting offended, especially when they're offended about somebody else's comment or somebody else's idea or any topic. I just want to go, wah. I want to go, wah, like, fucking wah. Like, you want to cry about it? Like, really? Like, man, cry about somebody hacking your arm off. Cry about somebody something that's really actually happening to you. But to me, it just seems like you're just making it more than it has. I get it. Some nasty stuff happens to people, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's good. But what I'm saying is that like you just pointed out, we don't have to take it in. We don't have to make it our world. We don't have to make it part of every reality that we fucking live. Like every time that we want to talk about, that would be like saying, and I'm sure the Germans would be against this. Every time we talk about Germany, we're going to talk about Nazis. Like, really? Does it mean that? No, it doesn't mean that. The German people are really nice people, as a matter of fact. I'm pretty sure they are. Every time, and the same thing goes true, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here on this. I know you're sensitive about this issue. Same thing and a lot of people are, about Trump. Okay, he's got a lot of crappy stuff. I'm sure there's some good stuff there. But we should have a dialogue that centers around not just one narrative when it comes to people, places, and things, not just one way of seeing it. The only way that's going to happen is if we actually have an open dialogue.
And coming back to our discussion about the Aikido
argumentation,
I think that it's important to not let those conversations be about winning. Like, you have to believe what I believe. Just because I tell you that, I mean, I don't think it's important. I don't think it's productive, I should say, that in any conversation, if we're talking about, let's say, what does it mean? Are Germans good or bad, right? To use your example. Are they all Nazis, or should they be represented as Nazis or not? I think that the conversation shouldn't be about me convincing you of something.
Right, exactly.
Convincing me of something. It's about exchanging those ideas, and maybe we both change a little bit,
right?
Because we've learned some information. But I think that's what you're reacting to initially. Was you're reacting to people who in the tenor of what they're offering you, it's clear they want you to believe what they believe.
Right. That's all they want you to do.
And
they're actually unwilling to actually open up that part of yourself, that part of your mind, that part of your heart that allows the other end of the conversation. I experience this a lot with my girlfriend when I talk to her. I get the distinct impression that you don't really want to hear what I have to say. You just want to speak, which is fine in certain scenarios, in certain discussions. But when it comes to these kinds of important discussions, if you want to develop a relationship with somebody in a relationship, but more importantly, in a society around certain topics, I think there's no way to make progress without both sides being heard equally. Whether or not you agree with the idea, you have to give it at least the same kind of floor that you give the ideas that people perceive as good.
I think when it comes to making decisions in a society, whether it's in a social setting, civic setting, governmental setting, whatever it is, I think that part of what we have to do there, not only do we have to have a free exchange of ideas, but we have to be able to have ground rules about how we're going to make the decision that's at hand. Right. Ultimately, we still got to make decisions, right? And if we disagree fundamentally about something, like let's say abortion, there's no way that we're going to be able to, in the current way we're doing it now, there's no way that we can make a decision and let everybody be happy about it, right? What we're going to get is make a decision, and half the people are going to be happy, and the other half are going to be upset.
Well,
so there has to be ground rules. So imagine if there was a way to set ground rules for decisions that everybody agrees to follow. Like the best example I have now is that the Trump administration doesn't have ground rules for what constitutes information, for what's actually fact. That's not even a joke, right?
Right.
Like, just make up shit. Like he just makes up shit and just states it and says that's true. And it's the contrary to everything that we know, or all like the last that report that his own administration presented about the effects of global climate change and the environment, and that it is detrimental. We are literally going to die because the clock has been ticking for quite some time, and it's in the very foreseeable near future that we are irreversible. Right?
What did he say about it?
He basically just brushed it off and said, "Oh, I don't believe it." He said, I've read the report. I've read it mostly, and I don't really believe it.
I've read it mostly.
And I'm just like, wow, you can. There's no way to read the report and its conclusions and not be frightened to death. It's basically saying the Earth is done for if we don't change shit, right? Like immediately. Like we got to do stuff immediately. And he's basically saying, No. So, and clearly he's got other facts in his head that he's made up or that he's got.
My guess is that much of what they're asking for in when it comes to controlling climate change is conflicts with some of the political agenda, some of the
but facts don't matter. Politics don't matter. I mean, that is.
But I mean, that's why he's using that voice. I mean, that's why he's.
I know, but I think the truthfulness of the facts that are there are not determined by his politics. They are determined by the scientific methods that were used to get those facts. And we can argue that, but we're not. But no one's arguing that right now. They're arguing, what do we do with this information? And he's
part of what's also a little bit alarming is that you'll get an audience that hears this dialogue and that will side with him because for whatever reason and pass off the same judgment and the same decision on the same rationale, which is it's not important, I don't believe it.
Right.
Okay, so then you get this where you're perpetuating this idea that we don't have to look at what makes facts. We just have to like it or not.
And I think those are part of the ground rules that have to occur. We have to have ground rules about what constitutes.
Kind of funny. It's kind of funny that I think we have this going on in journalism with this fact checking and all this stuff, and in the internet and people having ideas and.
It makes absolute sense to me why there's a proliferation of that now, because there needs to be. That is when you get something like the internet, where anybody and their grandma with a couple of bucks can post whatever nonsense they want to post and call it truth. Then you need somebody. Then someone's going to go, no, I call bullshit on that. That is bullshit. You are making stuff up for some other reason, whatever the agenda is or whatever the reason, you're making it up, or because you're just not informed enough. You're just propagating these false truths about whatever. And
there you go. That's a button that they should have on social media. The bullshit button. I'm calling bullshit on you. Yes. Bullshit. You got 5 likes and 10,000 bullshit likes.
That would be nice.
That would be pretty cool. At least bullshit.
It would end up being like the Amazon ratings for fucking tweets, and so it would be a popularity contest. Like it would just be a bunch of people who want to believe that, or to believe the fact number whatever.
Well, isn't that the case? Isn't that kind of what goes on right now?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we actually kind of have that already by just people liking stuff. But I don't know. I always want to migrate some academic standards for validating facts and sources with our current ones that we in public sphere, but people don't want to have those kinds of conversations.
Why do you think that is?
Shouting match, because that's more exciting. They want to.
Well, it also to me it kind of speaks also to that part of the reason why people might want to have that more sort of superficial, or what I would call sort of more of an amateurish type of dialogue, where we're just shouting at each other, and just whoever has the loudest voice and the most people behind them will kind of seemingly win the argument. And they'll say, "Oh, see, we won. We're right." I think it's because it's really quite an uneducated. And I hate to say it like this because I don't want to sound elitist, but it's a very uneducated sort of perspective when you realize, because that's what kind of people who aren't used to a more academic way to do it.
Point in discussions when we're making important
is to learn something.
It's not about being right, man. I'd rather be fucking wrong and get the right answer.
Right, it's about learning something. It's about increasing the intellectual capital of us all.
Think about it. If we were having a debate about global warming, right? And we said, and my contention was that we were going to die tomorrow because the Earth can't. And I could point to all these ways in which the Earth is crumbling under our feet right now, right? And somebody else said, no, I've got this other sciences that proves no, we're not going to. That's false. We're not going to die tomorrow. I would want to believe that other voice, wouldn't I? I don't want to die tomorrow. I don't want to blow up, right? But so wouldn't want to hold to my position. But I don't think people see. I don't think we're always seeing. We're just seeing. I want to win, because I have this other agenda. It's about this other thing. Right. It's about whatever. If
we're wrong about this, then we're wrong about everything.
I hate to say it, but I always boil this crap down to it's always a bottom line, man. It is almost always,
unfortunately,
money. It's always about somebody flying in their pockets. I hate this. It's always about that. And so this is why it's
the byproduct of a capitalistic society that we live in.
Capitalism, man.
It's just,
I really don't blame people as much as I blame the system that feeds on our own sort of human need for preservation, for acquiring, for being whatever. And it's capitalism. And it's the urge of capitalism to like get capital and gain it and get more.
Possess it and control it.
More money. It's always about getting more. Gotta have more. I gotta have more. Even when you've got enough. You know, even when getting more means you take away from those people over there.
Well, capitalism does not address. That's the funny thing. Capitalism doesn't address meeting needs. It doesn't really address that. It doesn't.
That's not what the system's designed to do.
No, and that's where the flaw is, in my opinion. The flaw is that there's no safeguard. There's nothing there. There's no moral, ethical value system that you have in place that balances out these directives that say profitability, that say that have these kinds of, you need that. At least with fucking socialism, I hate to say this because I'm not a socialist as most people understand it. I love social ideas because I believe that we all should benefit. But at least there's a moral directive behind it that that there's the greater good is where you're, we have that in our democratic.
I think that's the perspective in the United States. Our perspective is on the individual, and the individual, capitalist and democratic capitalist societies accentuate and feed on the aesthetic of the individual.
I think
social societies do not. Their aesthetic is the community.
I think that you can accomplish both. I think that if you truly understood the individual, then you can look out for the individual, because I believe this, that if you look out for the individual in its truest sense, its real needs, not the perceived needs that we think we do, but its truest needs, then you meet the needs of the whole. That the individual is just a microcosm of the greater whole.
And I think I prefer to see it as the individual situated in community. So we do not live existences in isolation. We don't do that.
No.
We might be able to articulate or think about or reflect upon how our spiritual self or our consciousness or whatever is larger and more than our material bodies. But we live in material bodies, and we act in material bodies, and we do things that affect these bodies, and those bodies affect other bodies, and we live in the particular historical context of now. And because of that, we are individuals who live in societies of other peoples. And so that's why I feel, yes, I see what you're saying. I agree, but I also want to nuance that and say it's not just about the individual for me. It's the individual within a community, which means for me, one big thing that it means is compromise.
Yes, I believe in that too.
And compassion.
I would
got to have compassion for people around you, meaning you got to not think about yourself.
Right.
And that's always good for everyone else and good for you. It's fucking boomerangs back to you. It always does. And so, yeah. So
I think when you talk about like certain goals for the individual, absolutely just benefit the individual. But those aren't the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the goals that don't just. There's bigger things that we address in our culture, like healthcare and like abortion and like all these kinds of bigger issues that we tend to see as bigger issues, but that when we reflect on it, because like for instance, gun control. I mean, I don't really think we have a need for guns, to be perfectly honest. I'm not going to say that you should get rid of them, but I just don't think. I mean, I don't have a need for an Uzi or even a pistol.
In advanced capitalist societies, Western societies, there's no need for guns. What are we going to do? That's not how we defend ourselves.
But I'm not going to tell anybody that they can't have it. That's not what I'm trying to purport. But my point is that the first argument that comes out when you talk about gun control, I'm just talking about the argumentation here of like meeting needs of society, is that people want to defend their right to have a gun, at least in the United States, because it's the First Amendment, all this kind of stuff. Like my right to own and bear arms, yes, but like they forget the context of what that was written in. Right, they forget that they also forget that our forefathers, just as a side note, would be considered terrorists today. Okay, those people were not fucking. They may be our forefathers, but we are the progeny of a terrorist organization, of fucking an ISIS organization put back into colonial times. They were ISIS back then. They just weren't cutting people's heads off because of some religious belief.
I agree with you. I think from my understanding of that, from the right to bear arms and where that came from originally, was not that individuals necessarily, although I don't know if that we could we could interpret it that way, but it's not that individuals had the right to bear arms. It's that the collective had the right to bear arms against England.
Yes.
Against their own.
Well, the biggest concern so from what I understand, this law stems from this right. And they made it an inalienable right, okay, of the citizens. And here's the reason, from my understanding, is that when we started this fight, this revolution against England, they made it a law. You couldn't have weapons. The only one who could have weapons what do they call them? The King's men, the King's army. The redcoats. They were the only ones allowed to have them, and if you had them, you could really be essentially put in jail for no reason, for indefinite period of time. And of course, they would come into the towns, and they could literally just take what they wanted. And of course, if you were in like Jamestown, or if you were in one of these colonies, and you and your family before you had spent all this energy and effort building a farm, defending it against Indians, trying to form this new life. Which is what they all were trying to do. And then your own government was going to really essentially be the enemy in this, was going to take your shit, going to come in there and just like fuck up your whole deal here. Well, God, you want a way to defend yourself against that. And they thought just because we want to be treated equally, or we wanted to be treated in a manner that was like, hey man, no representation, taxation without representation here. At least let us know what the fuck you're taxing us for. Don't just take our shit. It's hard enough. They wanted a way to defend themselves. And they made it illegal for them to. So it was because they didn't have a standing army. It was because they didn't have this. They didn't have militias. They needed a way to be able to collect these weapons and be able to defend themselves. And that was where it stems from.
And I think that's even today, it's important for us to be able to have that right.
I think it is too. I just don't think we need them all everywhere.
I think there are usually better ways to defend your life, property, and prosperity.
Today there are.
What's that?
Today there are.
Today there are. And that's mostly because of the modes in which we live and work and breathe and do things today than the modes that they lived, breathed, and did work in colonial America, which was much more wild and brutish. And so guns made a lot of sense, especially given the context they were in with this. But here's my question. When someone wants to make an argument to me about the right to bear arms, first I want to ask, are you expecting a revolution? Are you in your lifetime, are you really expecting, or you just want to be ready for the revolution? Because if you're expecting or are ready for the revolution, then you think that there's something bad about our government now.
I think, yeah.
So why the fuck are you sitting on your couch every night playing video games or watching TV when I thought revolutionaries usually do revolutionary work? I think there's no reason for the revolution. If your revolution is based on just owning guns and having a revolution, that's not a revolution. That's
I think this goes back to some very basic primal desires that we have when it comes to things we think should be ours. They did these really interesting studies with these monkeys, and they found that when they gave a monkey, they started this reward system where they give a monkey a slice of cucumber when he did this, whatever it was, and then they rewarded him with a cucumber, and then they would do it. It was like a rock. He would give him the rock, give him the cucumber, give a rock, give him the cucumber. He's like, okay, cool. And then they did with another set of monkeys where they did give him a rock and they gave him a piece of fruit. And then they let the other monkeys who got the cucumbers see that they gave the other ones little pieces of fruit. And the monkeys got the cucumbers, they would do their action, and when they were given the cucumber, now they would be like, fuck this shit. They would get pissed off. They'd be like, no, they wanted what the other monkey got. They're like, what the fuck, that bullshit, give me the fruit, motherfucker. And they would get violent. And then there was that famous story, I think I heard it, Joe Rogan mentioned on his show, where the guy who had raised some chimps or something, and I guess he came got so big it attacked his wife or something, so he had to give it back to the zoo or something, give him to the zoo or something of that nature. And so it was they showed up after gone for like a year or whatever, and he came back to the zoo to give the monkey like a birthday cake because they were like, he raised it from and he gave the cake to the monkey, and the other chimps saw the fucking cake and they fucking followed this guy down and they hunted his ass down in the fucking cage and they fucking killed him, ripped him apart. They ripped him apart because he gave this monkey a fucking cake and he didn't give them any. They were like, fuck this, we're fucking killing this guy. So there's a sense of veracity that we all have built within us, I think, as primates, that when we think something's unfairly happening to us, it makes us upset. And it's like a threat. And I think people feel this way when they go like, wait a minute, you're taking my right to bear arms, my right. You don't even fucking need that right to bear arms, and you defend it like it's breath, like it's oxygen. Like, I get it. Nobody wants taking your rights from anybody, but this is.
I think that leads down a set of steps that I don't think people who really make those arguments about having guns, they want to have their guns.
I don't think they're just using what they want.
I think it leads to this. There could be a sense of like the psychological sense. Like, I want to know what in it. How does the gun salve a wound in you that just possessing it makes you feel better? Like, again, I'm going to come back to, man, are you expecting a goddamn revolution? Are you leading a revolution? Because that's the only reason to bear arms in the United States. Because we have people that we pay. You pay good money in your taxes to
do that,
protect you. They're called the police. And they're called the Army and the Navy and the Marines and so forth. They're the ones that usually the same motherfuckers who want to keep their guns are the first ones to stand up and go, oh, let's put a pin on for fucking veterans. Like, look how, thank you for serving our country. You can go on the fucking airplane first. I think that seems like you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want somebody else to protect you and fight for freedom in the world, but you also want to keep your gun so that you can do it too. But you don't want to. But
you're not actually going to do it.
You don't want to risk your life.
I'm not.
Like, there's some other thing going on here, and it has to do with the way in which Republicans have yoked certain Christian ideas to the rest of their platform, which has only to do with money. The only reason why the government, or the only reason we have this debate, is because the NRA has had a historically strong lobbying force and spent millions of dollars to make sure that guns were easy and accessible. And the biggest culprit these days, fucking Walmart.
Really?
Fucking Walmart, man. Who is the biggest seller of guns and ammo? Walmart.
I didn't know that.
They are. Yeah, they're definitely the biggest seller of ammo, especially ammo, and I'm pretty sure of guns as well, but I know ammo for sure. So they have a big thing to lose. They have a big stake in this for them if we start taking away people's rights to bear arms, right? Take guns away.
Yeah, I don't think we should take any rights away. So I don't want anyone to misconstrue my idea here, but it's the argument around it that I don't like.
I want us to name this what it is. A right to bear arms, or any right, is a fucking construct, man. We don't have that. Nobody had that to begin with. Right. We made it up. A couple of white dudes made it up, and then they put it on some paper, and then they called that paper sacred, just like they did with the fucking Bible, just like they did with the Quran, just like they did with everything else that we've had.
I've talked about this before in other conversations, that we, as a culture, as a people, as a person, even individuals, we associate a meaning. The meaning is nebulous, really. We're the ones attributing meaning to everything, and we can attribute some really lofty meaning to something like gun control.
Good ideas or things that they're in these sacred texts. Yeah, I'm just saying that the idea of a right, an inalienable right, was a construct. Right. It is not. There's nothing inalienable about anything. We all. The forefathers, a bunch of men, agreed that white guys get to have those rights.
Get to have some guns.
Because the same forefathers who agreed on these rights had fucking slaves down to the last one.
Well, yeah, they also agreed not to address that issue in the Constitution originally, because they didn't want it. They felt, from my understanding, they felt that it would not be conducive to forming this country. Not that they didn't want it. Because I think, if I remember correctly, like George Washington, he had slaves, but when he died, He couldn't address the idea of freeing the slaves because I think he wanted to, because it shows up when he dies. When he dies, what does he do? He frees all of his slaves.
Yeah, and how convenient, man. You get to keep your slaves until you die. That's bullshit.
Doesn't mean he's a perfect dude. It just means that I think that intuitively he understood this, but
they knew the contradiction. All of them understood the contradiction, and they also understood the politics behind it.
I kind of think it's like how I feel about my car today. I got a Porsche Panamera. I love it, but it's probably not contributing to healthy Earth that I would like. I should probably be driving an electric car. There's enough options.
Hey, get a Tesla.
I totally want to get one. By the way, I got a friend who's got one. He took me for a ride, and it's fucking the bomb vehicle. It's awesome.
They drive themselves, don't they?
They can. I think they can. Yeah. But not in the same way that my Mercedes used to do this, where it stops and it'll.
My son, he works at Goodwill, and he receives he's a receiver. He receives stuff. Guy came up in a Tesla, self-driving Tesla, and he asked him about it. He said, "Does that really work?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I don't have to drive at all." It's also assisted, so he could take over if he wanted.
Right. Yeah, when I was in Vegas for the Olympia, and I took 2 Uber rides that had these self-driving. Really freaking cool. By the way, cool technology. I think it's awesome. They did have people in there that were making you feel comfortable. There's really people here just.
It feels like you feel like you're in like the Jetsons or something. If you're like, are we in control or or maybe the Terminator's more like when does this car become sentient and then kill? Realistic psychology.
Hey man, they say that's not too far in the future. When did they're talking about these robots now. They got making these new AI. The AI now is just really, and in Singapore they got those.
They should totally. Somebody should totally trip people out and name their thing Skynet.
Skynet. There we go. Yeah, that's right. That's the day I changed my name to John Connor and start a movement, man. No, but I did read something about what's kind of scary a little bit. And I haven't really thought through all the ethical and moral dilemmas with it. But they're in Singapore, and in Singapore they seem to do all the strange shit like this. They seem to be on the cutting edge of black and white-ish type issues. Like they had some kind of laws they passed with immigration. And because one of my friends was. One of our good friends, my buddy John Farrell, mentioned this. I know who you don't agree with on many topics for good reason. But he mentioned he told me once about this. I didn't know this, that they had some law that they had a 2 strikes kind of a thing where if you were caught, they gave you a deadline. If you were not a legal citizen of Singapore, if you were in Singapore, then you had to leave the country on your own. You could do it on your own, and they would help you. And then there was a deadline. After that deadline, then you could just be hunted down and put in jail, and you were caned. That was it. There was no 2 ways around. And if you got caught again, I think he said it was death penalty. I'm like, that's a little fucking far-fetched, man. I don't think we should be killing people just because of. But he said it was hugely successful. Nobody wants to break these laws. I said, well, yeah. No one would want to fucking break. It's like saying if I speed, and we're just going to start caning motherfuckers on the side of the freeway for speeding. I'd like to see that kind of. I think let's start beating the shit. I want to see some cop just beating. It did happen. Rodney King. What the fuck? It's it happens every day, and
we don't want that.
It happens every day already, but just not for the same reasons.
But I don't think justice should be administered on the spot.
But they got those. They got
process.
No. Yeah, I don't believe that. But I don't know if that's the way they did it there. But they did have these strict laws that sort of encouraged compliance. That's the whole reward punishment for behavior, trying to modify behavior through punishment. And like we were talking about, but it didn't create a compelling reason, moral reason for anybody to abide by the laws. All it did is make people want to stay away from the punishment. And I don't think that works.
It's called what is it? Avoidant behavior.
Yeah, and I don't want to. And I don't think it doesn't feel good to me to want to live into a society that just I'm just going to be afraid of shit. I don't do this because I'm afraid of the consequences. Fuck that. Let's find the real good reason. Give me the reason why you're telling me it's a bad idea. Like that should hold up, right? That should hold up to criticism.
Do you
Like
think
the reason why we shouldn't like a lot of people have this argument's very popular right now with immigration. The reason why we should have stricter immigration laws is why it should stand up to argumentation. It should stand up to criticism. If it doesn't, then your argument sucks, and we should rethink it. And that's my point. My point is that look, if you got a good reason, then and the reason's always we need to take care of our own. Aren't they our own too? Aren't they humans? Aren't they people? Don't they feel? Don't they have like? I get it. They weren't born in the dirt that I was born in. But who fucking cares? Like that's not the kind. Like
nobody chooses where they were born or what
but more, so it just seems arbitrary.
Arbitrary kind of logic that says that is based solely on luck of the draw, right? We don't.
Yeah. And I don't think that we. Well, but Singapore also has this really interesting thing too. Like you probably saw some of the things. I saw this little news clip. They have the police have these contacts that have this AI built in it where they could see stuff and they could interact with it and they have these social rankings for everybody. Have you seen this? They have these like it's like
there was a movie about that.
But this is real. Like they rank you, and essentially here's the fucked up part. You can't get like flights out from airlines if your social ranking's too low. You can't do shit. Like you can't go.
Your social ranking is?
Yeah, I think you could find out. I don't know if you know it all the time, but it's like a numerical ranking system that they rank you based on, and it's based on, this is the shitty thing, it's based on behavior. It's based on things like, not just what do you pay your bills on time, but do you lie, do you cheat, do you steal, all these other things. I don't know. They have all these ways of deciphering some of these things, but it's based on
movie, man.
It's based on choice. It's based on your choices. So like if you go and you buy fast food, your social ranking is going down because they want you to be healthy and productive. So if you're doing things that are in conflict with this, like buying fast food, going to certain kind of movies, doing certain kinds of things. So essentially, it's 1984, Big Brother. It's like it's the government deciding for you what actions and behaviors are good for you.
Here, it's not 1984. It is Brave New World.
Yeah. But exactly.
People, because if you buy into the system, chasing the rank, then you fucking regulate yourself. You don't need Big Brother telling you what to do. You can do it yourself because you want the higher ranking.
That's what everybody does.
Behavior modification based on it's the classic example of instead of coercing everybody, you get them to consent to their own oppression.
I like that.
You know, like that, and that was what Huxley was all about. Like his, we don't need to ban books; they'll burn their own books. So that's exactly what happens, right? So I think, yeah, you gotta. It's that's a dangerous proposition. I think that would be that's bad. That's a bad idea.
I think it is true. I think that any time that somebody else's, I don't think we should limit people's behaviors or choices. I don't think we should limit people's choices. And I don't think we should be making judgment calls on other people's choices if it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, if it's not conflicting with anybody else's freedoms. Just because somebody wants to smoke crack, for instance, just because you want to eat fast food and you want to smoke crack and you want to not go to college and you want to pick your friends poorly and you want to fuck 10 girls a week and you want to cheat on your boyfriend and doesn't mean that you should, that's you, man. That's up to you. You get to choose that shit. You'll pay the social consequences of that in your life yourself. You'll reap those, but I don't think my government or anybody else, for that matter, should be telling me what I should be doing. If you don't like it, don't participate with me. If you don't like it, turn away. It's not that. It's really easy. Okay. Now, granted,
well, some things, an individual can do that then affects the society around them. Right?
I get that, and I do think.
So I think that. So I think that's the paradox of this. That yes, there's individual choices. Those choices.
There is,
but they can also choices. Those individual choices can have consequences to the society, which is a problem.
Well, I think that problem solves itself. I really do. When you start thinking it through, I really think that it solves.
If all my neighbors just dump their trash in the street, no.
But they won't. Because they're going to suffer too. They're not, and they won't do it for very long.
What if they can't see that? Like, what if they can't see that they're causing harm?
a lot of harm is caused that they can't see, yet it still affects us.
Well, they'll eventually see it. They'll eventually feel it and see it because their neighbors they're going to be socially ostracized by their neighbors. There's going to be all
such a damaging thing that it's too late by the time we see it.
It's possible. I think all that would have to happen is a couple of times, and then see.
The one time it happens, it destroys the world.
Well, I don't believe in that. I don't think taking it because the garbage is just taking out your garbage, man. Like it's just the garbage. I can't place. I get what you're saying though. There might be if I was making nuclear weapons or something. Okay. But I'm not. I'm taking the trash out. Okay, it's like
I don't know where to draw that line.
I know. I think that's what makes these issues so interesting to talk about. And I think that we as humans naturally want to take these examples and draw and sort of elevate it to these principles, or this like try to find these hard and fast rules or these ways of guiding ourselves. And sometimes it works, and sometimes I think it kind of falls short a little bit. Not that I don't see what you're saying, because I think you're absolutely right. I absolutely think that sometimes I don't want my neighbor fucking experimenting with fucking making fireworks next door because he's gonna fuck, bro. Just like
do you want? I mean, your neighbor could could have a meth lab.
Right, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Actually,
dangerous.
When I lived in San Francisco years ago, I don't know if you remember this or not, but they have these row homes, and they're really close to each other. And I remember waking up one morning watching and I hear her on the news, like, oh yeah, one of them blew up, and it caused two other houses next door to burn down. I'm like, fuck, that sucks. But then when I heard what the story was, it was like there's some Chinese family that lived there. There were a couple families lived there, and they were importing fucking fireworks, and they were like making them in their fucking basement and selling them because there's big money, man, like big deal money, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fucking fireworks. And I guess some shit got flammable when fucking went up in smoke. They burned their own house down, burnt their fucking neighbor's house down. It just fucking blew up like a bomb. So needless to say, no more fireworks in that neighborhood. But it was just kind of funny. It was just kind of an interesting example. So yes, there are instances where, it's probably not a great idea to do that kind of shit. But I think this is where I have this real issue that we need to elevate conversation so that people can start generating or start developing these skills, these critical thinking skills, where they can make these good high-level choices that are good for everybody, good for themselves, because they'll realize that what's good for everyone is really the best for me.
I think you're right, but I think that's a big ask these days.
Well, it's because we're so used to being drones. We have the educational system, the corporate.
But I think we're so used to being entertained that we think everything has to be fucking entertainment.
Well, that may be true. I don't know.
I don't think that's a healthy way to live. Just like I don't think it's a healthy way to live to think that we're always going to be happy. You can't always be happy. Sorry.
Well, we can find, but we don't have to live. I think that it is a necessity. So most people confuse
necessity.
Most people confuse my ideas about happiness because they think like, oh yeah, enjoying happiness because I'm always talking about it.
I'm not trying to get
But I want to address this because I think it's important, because I want people to understand that I do believe that we can be happy and joyful the preponderance of the time. I don't think it is a necessity, and I don't think it's useful, actually. That would surprise a lot of people, because I do believe that what I call contrast in our life, those moments, those times, those experiences that don't feel so good, they create desire. They create the ability for us to move beyond where we are. There's no way to get beyond where you are when everything is status quo. If everything worked out, you would not be challenged. And if you're not challenged, you don't find innovative ways to overcome those challenges. And when you don't find innovative ways to overcome anything, you don't overcome anything. It's like, so you sit there on your couch and you play fucking video games and you don't do shit because everything is okay. And which is fine if that's what you want to do, but most of us kind of want to get, what's the number one thing that people say about their marriages, about their jobs? I want to grow. I want to grow as a person. I want to grow with my mate. Well, how the fuck do you think you do that? Do you think you do it by everything working out? No, it doesn't happen that way. It's more like you and your wife have been married for how many years?
26 years.
And what if I was to ask you the experiences in your marriage together that were the most growth enhancing, that stimulated the most positive change? Were they the things that went right or the things that didn't go so right?
Say it. Say that one time.
I said, were they the things that were the things that made your relationship grow the most over the years? Were they the things that went right, or the things that didn't go so right?
Oh,
that initiated the best changes. That made.
Yeah, it would be certainly those things that didn't go right.
Right.
Will be things that helped us grow, but I'll caveat that to say there were things that initially looked bad, that looked like, it's not what we want, it's really bad, but ended up being good.
Right, but that's different though. That's different. So you still need the rub. You still need the rub on the road to be able to realize the good traction that you actually have. And that's my point. My point is that joy happens and happiness happens in life because you recognize that the stuff that you once termed as bad really wasn't so bad. It was actually good for you, even though it didn't feel so good at the time.
I took it. Yeah, I seriously. The final lessons that I've taken from it is that I can't be too attached to what I think I want.
Yes.
I can have goals, I can have dreams, I can have hopes, but I have to be willing to bend enough so that I'm not so fucking attached to that goal, that dream, that I can't change my dream, my goal in midstream. So in some ways it's a kind of...
It's because then you lose the ability to learn. You lose the ability to really, to grow.
Like my goals that I say set for my career or whatever, or my life or my marriage or whatever, set when I start, are immature goals. I didn't
right.
know
Well, you don't have, like you said before, you don't have all the information.
Right.
You're gaining information.
As I acquire more information and experience and stuff, I change my goals and I change. Right. Now that's what. So yeah, I think I don't want to. So I want to say that there's this healthy sense of detachment, not a numbness, but just a healthy sense of detachment towards. Don't be too attached to this thing that I think I want today, because tomorrow I might find out that's kind of challenging.
And I would say the same. I would say, based on the premise of the show, the same thing must be done with ideas. But you can't get too attached to them because you need to revise them. Just like we talked about at the beginning, we need to revise them. And so we
all have to work on that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying people in general, like us as a culture. When I say you, I'm usually referring to us all in our culture, our society, because that's this is a conversation that we all have. So before we wrap up this first episode, you and I had to talk about diet, and I usually talk about diet and stuff, but we didn't really talk about it much. But you wanted to, I know that, and I thought about that. Oh, what a great idea! We were going to have this conversation offline, but I thought, what a good idea to just have it on the show and to give people a little bit of an idea of some of the stuff that I do on an ongoing basis. I'm a nutritionist and diet coach, and this is all I do. I've done it for 30 years, a little over 30 years now, with athletes and clients. And so I wanted to, and you had some questions, and we were going to sort of do some things with your diet, and I thought it would be a good exercise. And you were talking about fasting. And I picked this up.
And particularly, I was thinking more about time-restricted feeding.
Yes, so
I heard some stuff about it. I wanted to do it, and maybe this is also a topic for another day as well, because there's probably a lot to be said about this. But maybe I just didn't want to go into it with half information, and then you know what I mean, and then do something wrong that was going to be hurting me, or that was going to be just not a wise.
The simple gist of it is this: that I use it today. Like I haven't always. I was bodybuilder and used multiple eating schedule, but as I dig into the research and as I've experimented with myself first and then my clients now, and it seems to bear all this seems to bear. We're just healthier when we have a fasted period of time, and it's really time restricted eating is a form of intermittent fasting, and so there's a lot of people doing intermittent fasting in a lot of different ways. I've had different mechanisms which I've used it with my clients over the years, but I like here's a simple. We'll do it in parts. Part one. This is part one of my advice to you. The first bit of advice is one: establish for yourself. If you want to start this kind of time restricted eating, which I highly recommend it, because if you're like me, and I know you are genetically, you're exactly identical, and you're going to respond the same way I do, and I've responded awesome, and I really, really well, and I haven't had too many people that haven't. Women respond really well to it. And it's time restricted eating. Establish for yourself a 14-hour window where you do not eat. where you're not eating or taking vitamins or anything that your liver has to enzymatically start processing nutrients, which is, so water is the only thing. Tea, no good. Artificial sweeteners, no good. Sugar-free gum, no good. Anything that your body is going to perceive and your liver and your body has to sort of start to process, with the exception of water. Water's okay. And establish it. And I suggest, end of the day, I suggest it during your sleeping time. So, but you're going to have to get 14 hours. So let's say you go to bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock. You go to bed at 10 o'clock. So that's noon the next day. That's 14 hours. So you can't eat till noon. Now, the first 2 weeks is the toughest. I'm just going to warn you. Most people haven't started this, but the first 2 weeks is the toughest. You go, fuck, I'm fucking hungry. Because you're used to eating your body. So here's what happens, just from a general standpoint, so you understand why this mechanism is good. When you establish this window and you maintain it, the body is set up to be really under two modes: feeding mode or storage mode, or energy release mode, essentially. So your body's going to either enzymatically, hormonally be set up to take in nutrients and store them and be ready to use them and recover and repair. That's the state that most people exist in all the time, and it's really an ineffective state for activity, exercise, for general health and for longevity. It doesn't support those things. What it supports is giving your body the potential to do that. But when you give yourself this break, 16 hours is technically the best, but actually I see all the benefits from if you can establish a 12 to 14 hour window. If you can establish a 14-hour fasting window where you're not eating or processing anything but water, then you get the benefits. And you can go off the rails once a week, 1 to 2, usually, well, studies say 2 times, but I say just formulate one cheat in your week, usually on the weekend, and you can go off the rails and do whatever you want and fuck up your timing. But when you establish this, your body begins, after so many hours, your body hormonally and enzymatically becomes a powerhouse of releasing energy. People say, oh, I need to eat before I work out. Oh, no, you don't. You don't really. But the way you're eating now, yeah, you probably do. Because your body's in storage mode. It's waiting for nutrients. It's not releasing them. That's why you don't lose weight when you do cardio. That's why your body's not doing the things that it normally should. The studies bear this out. When people just adjust the window, they end up losing body fat and gaining muscle. It's just, and they don't even have to work out to do this. Like, it just works. So that's part one. That's your part one. We'll get another show. We'll do part two, where we get to some specifics, because managing the actual nutrients, the actual macronutrients, what you're actually putting in that 10-hour window of eating, because it's a 10-hour window that you eat, managing exactly what's going there can affect the outcome. But all you're really doing is like, it's like a radio. You're just tuning your dial to exactly the station you want. You're going to receive stations right now, but if you want exactly, like, I want a 6-pack and I want to look like this, then you can tune it a little more specifically with exactly what you eat. But for right now, just get the window down, get your body hormonally up to speed, because it's going to adjust its hormones. People usually sleep better. They have better brain cognition in the morning. They release their energy better. They have more energy in the morning. This is the usual setup that happens after about 2 weeks. Once you get that 2 week, and they get less hungry. They're like, oh, I'm less hungry. I'm not as hungry anymore. Yeah, really? Because your body's not pumping out insulin every 2 hours. It's like it's not ready to store and feed and gorge. You're really telling your body to gorge when you do this. It's like, when a bear gets out of hibernation, starts to eat, he'll eat up to 80, 90, 100 pounds of fish in one fucking sitting after he gets out. But he can do this because he has a similar mechanism that we got. When he starts to eat, insulin production goes up, and he starts to get hungrier and hungrier and hungrier until he's so full he can't eat anymore. And that's how most people I fucking started eating, I couldn't stop. I finished a whole bowl of popcorn, finished a bowl, 2 bags of fucking, like, yeah, well, you shouldn't have started in the first place. It's like, it's not going to end well here, folks. And so that's the way we're biologically set up. So we're in energy releasing mode, or we're in energy storage mode. And so by eating frequently, you put yourself in storage mode. By not eating, our bodies become really good at releasing. As a matter of fact, I'm a firm believer now in fasting, and there's in longer fasts periodically, not all the time, but periodically, and they're very healthy for us. And here's the studies bear the shit out that when you fast, when you give yourself this fast, we have our longevity's better, our bodies work better. I have no bloat. Remember I used to always walk around all fucking bloated? None, gone, done. done. No more. I don't have any more. And I eat what I fucking want. I really do. I really essentially eat what I want. But I do have a little more light, a little more muscle. But still, again, like I said, if I wanted to dial this in, it'd be really, really simple. But so that's stage one. And we can start talking about stage two. But hey, so no matter what, thank you for being on my first show. We're going to do this again and again and again. And I love this. I've always wanted to share these conversations that you and I have, because this is very typical of some of the conversations that we would have about different issues and stuff. And we'll come up with some other ones as well. But I just like having these dialogues. And also, and I'm going to be selfish about this, it gives me a great excuse just to get a chance to talk to you. So, so thanks.
All right. It's good talking with you, and I'm excited about the conversations that we'll have in the future too. So
yeah, and then hopefully in the future I'm going to get a studio set up, have a little couch and or at least a table, and then we can talk across. All right, man. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you being on the show, but man, I love you. You know that, and I'm looking forward. I'm hoping to look. It's the Christmas season. I'm hoping I can get out and see you guys sometime soon. So
that'd be great.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the first episode of Handle Your High with me, Tadayoshi. Next episode 2, I'm going to try to record as many episodes as I can a week. So hopefully between 2 and 4 episodes a week. So thanks. Join us next time. I appreciate everything. And I'm out.